evening. As is typically the case with EDA meeting evenings, we will postpone the public comment for general purpose until the beginning of the council meeting, which will happen immediately following the Economic Development Authority meeting that is underway here. So that then brings us to our business items this evening. We have 3 business items. Our first 2 are development related, the first of which is to consider a number of resolutions, in this case, consider a resolution of support for the Oyate Ota Center's Livable Communities Account Grant application. And I'll turn it over to Jeannie Kelsey, our Housing and Economic Development Program Manager for this item this evening. Welcome, Ms. Kelsey.
Thank you, President Rowe and board members. In your package for your consideration is a resolution of support for an application for LCA money from the Met Council. It is for putting actually offices for the 3 organizations that are partnering. Currently, right now, the Montessori American Indian Child Care Center is in the current space, has been leasing the space from the church. The church is planning on moving out permanently and relocating and consolidating with another church in St. Paul. So for your consideration, this group, the 3 of them want to rehab the buildings, turn them into their main offices, and also offer services based upon their organization's capabilities and what they offer into the community. They are available for anyone to utilize, just not Native American. So for you, in your consideration of the packet, I do have a couple of representatives here too, in case you have any additional questions. But the resolution is up for your consideration.
All right, and once again, this is specifically in support of the request, of the grant application for the Metropolitan Council Livable Communities Grant. Is that correct? Okay. All right, are there questions from members of the EDA for staff on this request this evening? Member Strawn.
I just had a question about the Montessori. I think at one point we'd been requested by various members of the community because they were concerned about the being able to utilize that for fire space. Is that correct, or am I mixing that with a different facility?
Member Strawn, I believe you're talking about the same facility, but that was for a temporary homeless shelter for a period of time, which we have set up a process to do. So my understanding, that's totally independent of what this request is. I don't believe there's any plans, at least at this point, by the group to do something similar, but I suppose they can answer that question directly.
Okay. I just wanted to check to make sure that obviously we had mitigated any fire safety concerns if we are moving forward, if they're already utilizing that space in that way. Here she comes.
Right, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the issue was the length of time that the church wanted to do the emergency homeless shelter for was longer than was permitted, and so there was some concern about that. But I think we may have an update from our community development director who has come up to give us
President
that.
Rowe, members of the board, I think there's 2 separate issues that are maybe kind of being confused together. There is the temporary overnight shelter, and there was a concern about wanting to do that for 60 days as opposed to 30 days. I think the issue you're referring to, Board Member Strawn, though, is there is already a daycare in this facility. And there were some issues at the building permit stage in getting that set up because the proper sprinkling was not in that space. And so they did rectify that, and the daycare is in there now and operating and has been for a few months. And so they would just continue to use the space in that way.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the EDA for staff? All right, does a representative of the applicant for the grant funds wish to address the council, present any case, or answer questions? Hello and welcome. If you can introduce yourselves and feel free to address the board.
Good evening, council members. My name is Nathan Ratner. I'm the coordinator for the Oyate Ota Center Development Initiative. We're really excited and grateful for your consideration of our grant application, and I'm happy to say a few words and answer some questions, and I'll let my colleague introduce herself as well.
Good evening, council members. I'm Kate Lamers with Element, and we are the project managers and owners representative for the Oyate Ota project.
So the Oyate Ota Center is a very exciting initiative of 3 different nonprofits who serve primarily the American Indian community in the East Metro, and they've been doing so for decades. And they're interested in finding a single location to co-locate in so that they can reach an efficiency in terms of operations, as well as in centralizing services so that families can seek all of the supports that they need, from literally prenatal services all the way up through elder support, all in one place to minimize the difficulty of navigating appointments and locations. And we're really grateful for the partnership and leadership of the New Life Presbyterian Church and their commitment to working with us through this transition for their home.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant for the grant? Member Schroeder.
Yes, could you tell me how many clients do you think you'd be serving when having all three in one location?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, the nonprofits collectively serve about 700 families annually. And what's really cool is that their focus is on the American Indian community, and they have a lot of cultural knowledge and leadership and Native leadership throughout, but that they provide services across all communities, in particular the food services, where initially we will have a satellite food shelf, and then over time we seek to grow that service out. But that serves they're currently located in Little Canada, and they distribute about 360,000 pounds of food a year. We wouldn't do that amount. We would have to downsize and then regrow it over time, but it will serve quite a few people.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Member Bauer.
I know with a lot of these LCA grants with Met Council, there's I think all the ones I saw in the profiles have a housing component. Is there a housing component to yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So immediately, the American Indian Family Center, which is one of the three nonprofits, provides a range of housing support, from finding suitable locations, as well as actually helping with some of the costs of relocating to housing that suits that family's needs the best. In addition, the Interfaith Action of Greater St. Paul, which is another one of the partners, actually has purchased and is rehabbing its own housing facility in partnership with the state of Minnesota. And so we'd be able to integrate with their service as well.
But for this site, you're not expecting housing?
No, we do not plan to build housing on site. Yeah.
And then I know there's a number of requirements for these LCA grants, and just looking through your request, just trying to get an understanding. I know one of the requirements is a site plan and other items as well. Do you have any of those? Just trying to understand what's all going to be there. It's somewhat a little bit challenging giving support when we don't really know in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember, they do have a conceptual site plan. They've been working with the design team for, I think, a couple of years now. It is conceptual, but for this pre-development, this initial grant, then that would be advanced enough, because the pre-development is really intended for this early exploration and to kind of help determine how best to fulfill the different goals. And we have been advised by Met Council staff that the housing services that they do provide would be important, and kind of the stage in the project that they are in sounds appropriate for what we would be pursuing at this time.
And when is your grant due? When do you have to submit the grant to Met Council?
The pre-development is due July 21st, so about a week.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for bringing this potentially to our community, and stay tuned.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll check if there are members of the public who wish to speak to this request. Once again, this is a request to provide a resolution of support for the applications that this group of organizations is making to the Metropolitan Council for Livable Communities grant funds. As was noted, there is a pre-development grant as part of this, and then also I believe there is also the demonstration account, or maybe it's all lumped together, but two separate. Okay. Got it. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? It does not appear to be the case. I'll turn it to the members of the EDA. We've got a request to adopt the resolution that's attached to the request for action in support of those applications for the LCA grant funds.
Second.
I think it's been made for you. Member Groff, you've made a motion because it's been seconded by Member Strong.
What was your motion?
I'm assuming it's a motion in support of
applications
the,
as they
okay, okay.
Just didn't get it all done.
And Member Strawn, your second was for a motion in support of the resolution.
Indeed.
Okay. Right, just to be sure. All right, discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Member Groff.
Thanks for bringing this forward. I think it's really important that our community support these efforts, and I'm glad to see that there's a good use for the church that's there. I think it'll be a great addition to the community. I also appreciate that it's open not just to Native Americans, but to the whole community, so everyone can receive services there. Thank you for bringing it forward.
All right, and as the seconder, Member Strong.
I echo Member Groff's comments, and I do know that we have a good history of having a lot of nonprofits here in Roseville, and I appreciate the extent and the breadth of the work that's being done in this partnership, and I'm excited that we don't have a vacant space, but that it's something being used for good. Also, for the last few years, we haven't had a dedicated food distribution site in Roseville, and so I appreciate that option, especially as they grow and change. And it also is somewhat removed from a neighborhood. I don't anticipate that it would have it's not between a whole bunch of houses. One side, at least, is a bunch of people who aren't going to probably bother much about it. And so I appreciate that they bringing this forward. It's a graveyard.
All right, all right. Other discussion on the motion? I speak in support of the motion. I think the only other note that I would have is I know there has been a community garden on that site, and there may be some interest from the community in maintaining that. Certainly, we will not make that a condition of this motion or any other approvals, but I just wanted to make a note of that. If there's no other discussion on the motion, we've got the motion before us to adopt the resolution supporting the LCA grant applications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. I will note there were some nods from the representatives of the proposers here this evening when I mentioned the community garden, so that's a good thing. All right, that brings us to our second item this evening, which I started to almost introduce as the first under the business items for the EDA, and that is, in this case, a number of resolutions of support for various types of funding assistance for a project in the Twin Lakes area. And I will turn it back over to Ms. Kelsey to introduce this item for us.
Thank you, President Rowe and board members. This is the last parcel in the redevelopment TIF district of Twin Lakes Redevelopment 1 area. There are two TIF districts in this area. One is for the hazardous substance on the sites, and the other is for redevelopment pooling funds. I wanted to bring to your attention at this point that we are seeking a resolution of support for the use of the TIF districts, as that is a requirement for one of the applications that we are going to be seeking to help fill some of the gap. As you see in the information provided to you, we're looking at almost an $8 million environmental cleanup on the site at this point. To be honest with you, 7.7 is the number that we have right now. In addition to, we have environmental cleanup funds of $4.5 million. The rest we're looking at seeking in grant funds. Depending on our success of those grant funds, because we never know what our competition might be coming in from our city and who else is applying, we will know more later on this year. Many of these grants are due, one of them is due here August 1st, the next couple are due November 1st. And so those will be also the ones we'll be seeking, which will be the Met Council, Deeds Cleanup, and also Ramsey County. And the three of them then work together to figure out how to make it all work between the three. For your consideration, I do want to turn it over to Paul High for him to do a short presentation and introduction of himself and his development company, as well as the project that he's proposing on the site.
Hey.
Hey, Paul.
Hello and welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Paul Hyde with Hyde Development, and here to give you a little overview of ourselves and the site and some of the environmental and redevelopment issues that we're facing and things that we're excited about with this project. Just a bit about me. I've been doing industrial redevelopment on polluted sites since 1995. Started doing it with my dad, who was an environmental lawyer. And we've grown that focus into doing a number of greenfield sites, but our core competency is redeveloping polluted sites. And we've done more federal Superfund sites in this state than anybody else. And excited to be able to use our skills on this one, which will need our skills. So let me take you a bit through the site. First here, this is an aerial photograph. If you guys can see this, this is a historic aerial photograph showing the original site with kind of the wetlands, marshlands on the east side of the site or the right-hand side of the page. The red boundary is the site property. The yellow line is our proposed building. And then the different colored holes are soil borings, groundwater wells, and hollow stem auger borings. And what we're trying to show here is not only are we going to end up dealing with environmental issues, but there's historic site issues with this old swampy area here as well that are going to affect our redevelopment. Another site with a lot of dots on it. This is an aerial photograph of the site in operation. Again, the blue line is the property line. There's a overview of our current building, and then what you're seeing is a variety of different soil borings, groundwater samples, both shallow and deep, as we try and kind of take all this historic data that's been compiled so far and get a final picture of what we're going to face when we do the cleanup. What we're trying to figure out at this point is what we're going to find when we start building the building so that we're not surprised. And the reason that's important is we need to be able to handle the environmental issues in approval or per the approved Pollution Control Agency cleanup plan, and then have the money to pay for it. And so we like to figure out today what we're going to find, not when we're out there on the site. And that's why I have gray hair, as I've learned that over the last 30 years of doing this. We've been working with Seller and have the site under contract. We've just completed our field work. We spent over $200,000 trying to do this environmental work to get a comprehensive picture of what's out there. And we're trying to decide not only where is it going kind of laterally, but how deep and what's there and what we're going to find, as well as what soil condition issues we're going to find that will all affect our redevelopment. Our goal then is to get a budget that matches the cleanup plan approved by the state. And then we go with Jeannie's help here to try and find the different buckets of money to help pay for that cleanup. You heard about the dates. There's a number of different pots of money that we can access, and your staff's excellent at identifying them, and we're going to work hand in hand in putting those applications together and trying to fill up those different pots of money from the different 4 different grant funds, maybe more, that we can access. So sitting here tonight, we've completed the field work. We're going to start to get our data back and our results tomorrow, which will help validate our initial budget. And then we'll have a real good sense of what this is going to cost. Our next step would be then to get that cleanup plan approved by the state of Minnesota, and then in for the different rounds of grant funds that are going to run through the course of the summer and the fall, which is the subject of some of the resolutions tonight. As I've said, we've done this a bunch. We've done sites that are harder than this, but not many. And excited to be able to tackle this one and bring the project to you, which I'll describe here next. Let me see if I can get the mouse. There we go. We're proposing an industrial tech building similar to our Northern Stacks 5 project in Fridley. And this building is going to really attract manufacturing and medical users, lab users, folks with clean rooms. Think people with R&D functions, clean rooms, design and manufacturing of medical device technologies. That's the kind of use this site is going to attract. We are a year away from delivering the building, but already have really significant interest from a number of different folks in that kind of bucket of companies. And just have to get through these environmental issues and the funding of them to be able to get to that point to deliver the building and those jobs and tax base. A quick look at an early exterior rendering of the building. This is really just a concept plan that we shared with city and staff last week. We're working our way through all the different requirements of the zoning code to make sure that our plan complies, but this is just an early image of the building and just to look at what the building look like at night. We're going to add a number of new jobs here. The number is probably over 200, and significant tax base to this technology center. And I got real good experience from having done this just down the road in Fridley that this is exactly the kind of user we're attracting. And we know that because from our early marketing efforts, that's who's knocking at our door. So the point of that is to give you a sense of where we are in the project in these early days, but happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hyde. Appreciate that information. Are there questions from the EDA board for the developer? Does not appear to be the case, so you must have made a very good presentation and answered all of our questions.
Yeah,
So
blind squirrel.
that.
All right.
There we go. I will stand by in case questions do
Okay.
come up, though.
Thank you.
You can feel free to have a seat, but I mean,
Okay.
don't head home quite yet. We should check if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this proposal. Once again, a number of resolutions of support are being requested for various sources of funding, primarily for the environmental cleanup associated with this project. Roughly a $31 million project, and roughly 20% plus or minus is the cost of the environmental cleanup on that. Anyone from the public here to speak to this item this evening? All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll move to EDA board consideration. I'm going to just double check. Is it possible to take up all of the resolutions as a single motion? Is there
I
any
was
reason
just going to ask that.
is there any reason we couldn't do that this evening? Does not appear to be the case. Just to expedite things, assuming that there's not going to be like more controversy on one than another, I don't know, but I'll just turn it back to the board for thoughts from the board.
I'd move to, for all 5 of them to be approved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Schroeder, seconded by Member Groff to approve all of the resolutions of support that have been requested for this project this evening. Discussion on the motion from the maker of the motion, Member Schroeder.
Yes, I much appreciate your history on being able to handle these kind of sites because they can be unknown and a big surprise. So you know, obviously you're prepared for that, and just to be able to get the site developed, I'm really happy that this is going to be able to go forward.
Right, and as the second, Member Groff.
And I would echo those comments, and having been on the council a number of years, not as long as Mayor Rowe, but we have been trying to get something with Jeannie and with community development for some time, and the other things have not worked out. So we appreciate your efforts, and I hope this all goes through well. One question I should have asked.
Okay, well,
Ask
we
you.
can pause for a question.
What happens if the numbers are really bad tomorrow? I just heard you say the tests come back tomorrow. Or
Yeah, Member Groff, I checked before we walked in, and they're trending towards what we're showing you tonight. But that's the nature of these, and our job is to be flexible and try and attack it at the beginning. And, we've had 1 or 2 projects in my 30 years where costs went up, you found something extra, and there are supplemental grants for that if need be. They're harder to get. Mm-hmm. But we try and tackle it. That's why we spend so much money up front. We want to know the extent of the cavity at the beginning, not at the end. So sitting here tonight, it's tracking towards what we're showing you in the report.
Oh,
Thank you.
And I sort of thought that from your comments because you are experienced with this, so you're projecting things from your past experience. So that's why I second the motion.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. And other discussion on the motion, Member Strawn.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it's really clear. Not only do we support the the development of the site, but it is an opportunity for us to clean up, obviously, a very contaminated area. You know, people have said, oh, it should be housing and other things, and really, I know that our EDA has worked very hard to make sure that we find a suitable use for this, and we appreciate your expertise, Mr. Hayden. We thank you for that additional step, and hopefully this is the last time we have to be at this point where we hope that something will go forward and that we can, it's a beautiful rendering, and I love the downlighting on the outside at night. But I hope that this is the thing that finally makes sure that that space for the neighborhood and for the rest of the community who go through this area, that they're actually in a space that is not polluted and is not a detriment to the community.
Other discussion on the motion? I thought of a question, so I'm going to pause again for a question. This is for staff. So as I understand it, these funds that we're talking about from the city are not prospective tax increment, but rather would be what has already been collected in the district, correct? So there isn't, essentially it's on the tax rolls from the beginning, as I understand, as opposed to oftentimes with TIF, the district starts with the development and the period goes forward to collect. Am I clear on that?
Correct.
Okay. So this is an unusual situation with tax increment financing.
Because it's existing.
Yeah.
And we got the special legislation to utilize the full amount for Twin Lakes 1.
Right, because of the fact that the development had not occurred during the normal window within which it would have had to have been done. Right, with that additional clarification, thank you for indulging that. We do have the motion before us, and this is once again to approve all of the resolutions of support that are sought in this particular action this evening. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those resolutions are approved. We wish the applicant luck with all of the funding, and hopefully we'll see you back with whatever the next stages might be. All right. With that, then, we'll change gears a little bit with our Economic Development Authority. We do have one final business item, and this is our first look at the 2026 proposed EDA budget and tax levy. And we have our Community Development Director, Janice Gunlock, with us this evening to bring this for our consideration this evening. And I believe, would we have to take action at this meeting in order to meet the deadline in September, or do we have one more bite at the apple here?
President Rowe, I would have to defer to the finance director. I think in the past we've had one more opportunity in September, but it's always been within like a week. So we'll get clarification.
Okay, so we should try to get as much covered this evening as we can.
Yep, and I did provide the resolution just in case you were ready to do that now, but if we needed to come back, we could do that. Just really quickly, every year the EDA is of course tasked with preparing a preliminary budget and levy for consideration by the City Council. For 2026, staff has proposed a preliminary budget and levy of $364,826. This proposed budget is $85,030 less than 2025. The actual proposed levy is $30 less than 2025. Some details that make up this particular budget and levy include that $85,000 of revenue has been moved from 725, the EDA fund, to Fund 727. So over the years, we've done it a little bit differently. Sometimes we've budgeted for it. Sometimes we put it in 725. The finance director has now wanted us to put it in 727. So it looks like our budget has dropped significantly, but really we're just moving revenue to a different fund. Some staff costs have increased by $1,912. Memberships and subscriptions have increased by $40. We have a few that the EDA funds, including ULI, EDM, and the Business Journal. Software costs have increased by $18. And then the big item that is allowing us to have a slight budget savings is we have removed $2,000 of miscellaneous costs that we were budgeting in the general EDA expenditures program. We still have $1,500 of miscellaneous that we're budgeting in general EDA or economic development program, and we think that that is sufficient to cover our needs. There could, of course, be a really small expenditure. If that comes up, we think we can absorb it with the fund balance in the current Fund 725. So when you add and subtract all those things together, that's where you get the difference of $30, the lowering of the levy. I did want to take this opportunity to just bring a few things to your attention. While they might not specifically be in the budget, they could relate to the budget in the future. The Rice and Larpenteur Alliance funding, this is in the budget of $40,000. This remains flat and has been that way for a few years now. We are also not requesting any additional funding for the EDA's various loan programs. You'll see in the report that we put together, we have various funds that contribute to our loan programs. And they've been very popular, and we've had to move some money around in order to keep doing those loans. And so some of those balances are decreasing, and we may or may not need to ask the EDA to levy some funds for those programs if you wish to continue them in the future. We don't think that's needed for 2026. You certainly could discontinue programs, you could modify programs to prevent levying, but we just at least wanted to bring that to your attention, that we have been spending money from different funds in order to keep those programs alive. I also wanted to note that the Land Trust Partnership, we aren't asking for any EDA budget for that program. When that partnership was created, we had identified the Housing Replacement Fund, I think it's also called the Single Family Fund, as a funding source. We haven't actually had to use that because Jeannie has been very successful in securing grants for our Land Trust Partnership. And I do want to take this opportunity to acknowledge a $620,000 award from the Ramsey County HRA to continue to fund that Land Trust Partnership. And so that's been really vital in order to continue to do that program. And then lastly, we've talked about this as it relates to the housing needs assessment. There is some local affordable housing aid that is coming to the city. Those funds may be able to use for certain loan programs. They may be able to be used for other initiatives. We just wanted to bring that to your attention, that we'll be coming forward either later this year or early next year to figure out what we're going to do with those monies and where we're going to program them. But we did hear last week from the Minnesota Department of Revenue that the numbers for Roseville for 2025 are just shy of $564,000, and that'll come to the city in 2 different installments. And that is on top of the 200 and some thousand that we received last year. So there is some additional money that can be budgeted towards EDA efforts in the coming years, unrelated to the levy. We did provide a budget comparison in your packet materials beginning in years 2023 actuals up to year to date. And then we have that resolution that we've prepared, which recommends the preliminary levy to the City Council in the amount of $364,826. And I can attempt to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add.
Mr. Trudgeon.
On the dais tonight is just another sheet showing the EDA budget, kind of in the format you're going to see later as part of the city budget. It's the same stuff, but reconfigured differently. The budget in the packet has a lot more detail than that sheet would show, but it shows you the breakdown. But just for a point of reference, you don't need to do anything with it, but just providing that for information for the council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions from the members of the board for the staff? Member Schroeder.
Yes, and maybe this goes to the city manager, the bench handout. When I look at the total expenditures for 2026, it doesn't match what's in the packet. So I'm not sure, because in the packet, total expenditure proposed for 2026 is $364,826, and then on this handout, total expenditures are $449,820.
Probably about $85,000
Yes.
difference, I'm guessing.
So-
Exactly.
So,
That's a combined fund statement, which includes 725 and 727.
and so this, okay, so the one in the packet is just the one, and this is both of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, because oftentimes
Yeah, I knew that.
we're showing
This
different
is-
things in different funds, so it's good that we're all understanding what we're showing. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure on that. And then my other question would be, with the Rice Larpenteur initiative, we fund that 40,000, but does the EDA also get involved with what it's doing and all that? And so is there, for the 40,000, I guess, what is it that the EDA is expecting Rice Larpenter to be doing? Is that business development or community building, or just curious on overview on what we'd like to see with that?
So I think it probably would be appropriate to bring the executive director of the RLA in to present their annual report. To more specifically answer your question, I sit on one of the committees, and the mayor does as well. He's probably more involved in some of the actual programming than I am, but I will say that the RLA does provide business outreach. They engage in a lot of community events. The Summer Block Party is a pretty big event that we get a lot of engagement with the public on. There's a few other events that they do. They have placemaking initiatives. You may have noticed the Rice and Larpenter signage that has gone up on the corner to help sort of identify the area. They have advocated on Roseville, St. Paul, and Maplewood's behalf to secure the BRT line on Rice Street that will be coming forward in the coming years. And so there are lots of efforts like that that the RLA is serving Roseville. And that's what we're paying, that's what we're getting for that contribution. I also want to note, when that RLA was originally envisioned, municipal funding was thought to be able to decrease as years went on and additional grant funding could be secured. We did initially contribute $50,000, and we've decreased that to $40,000. And once COVID hit, the ability to make up all of that grant funds or partnership donations has struggled, and so that's why the municipal funding remains flat. I believe, and Mayor, you may know better than me, that the RLA is engaging with a consultant to update that strategic fundraising framework plan to sort of think again in the future, long term, about how we're going to continue to fund these efforts, because Roseville contributes $40,000, St. Paul contributes $85,000, and Maplewood contributes $10,000, and then Ramsey County contributes monies through various grant programs. And the idea is they're all collectively working to better that corner, since there are 3 cities in a county that come together there.
I think your suggestion that sometime it might make a good idea to have the director come in and update what they're doing, because I think it's been a while, right? When's the last
It's supposed to be an annual thing, but I don't know that it always happens annually.
Yeah, and I think when we updated the cooperative funding agreement and the professional services agreement with the chamber, that came forward in March to the city council for approval. And in the past, I believe the executive director has come to those meetings and presented the annual report in conjunction with sort of re-upping those next year professional services agreement. But there was a conflict this year, so she couldn't make the meeting, and based on the timing of the actual fiscal year, we had to do it. But I bring that up only because you could reference those March City Council materials, because there is a work plan that's attached to that that cooperative funding agreement and professional agreement that outlines all of the various efforts that the RLA is intending to engage in the next fiscal year, as well as what they accomplished in prior years. And so I could, resend that out if you're interested in seeing
Right,
it.
and that was their work plan, but what has actually been accomplished would be the update to that. Yes.
And that's a part of it, I
Yeah,
believe.
and I can certainly add a little bit to the mix too. Just a few things that the Alliance does for local small businesses. For instance, they do have a couple of business connection type events, networking type events, and where people can learn about small business activity in that area and things like that. I think a couple of those a year. There's the Alliance is a sort of a conduit for both St. Paul and Ramsey County on the suburban side for small grants to small businesses for like signage or facade improvements for their businesses. I know that the Alliance did a lot of work to try to coordinate with possible developers and the city of Maplewood on the Waterworks site where the Rice and Larpenter Gardens are now, the community gardens. And ultimately, the Waterworks decided that they weren't completely sure that they didn't need that property going forward, and so that sort of has not materialized like it was hoped to. The other thing that the Alliance did a lot of work on over the last couple of years was they obtained free services from actually, trying to think of the federal agency that it is. It's a brownfield review process. So I'm just not sure of the federal agency right offhand.
I
But
think it was an EPA program.
could have been an
wasn't it?
EPA program. That's kind of what I was wondering.
Technical
But then
advisory.
I wasn't sure. So, but anyway, they did a lot of work to identify potential sites, identify potential issues. Actually worked with, I think it was Stantec was the consultant that also helped to sort of frame up an update to the vision plan for the development of that neighborhood. To sort of take what had been identified in the prior plan several years ago, kind of figure out what had happened, and then also where the new potential lay. So a lot of that is going on, and a lot of that is the work that the Alliance does that isn't always as visible as some of the events that are held, which I think are important in making sure that community feels like it is a community and is able to work together as neighbors and local businesses and things like that. So it all is layers on the whatever metaphor you want to use as to what's being done by the Alliance. But I agree that it probably does make sense at some point to have the executive director back in or a representative to talk about it more with the board. Are there other questions from members for staff on the proposed 2026 budget and tax levy? Member Bauer.
Yeah, the current fund balance for the EDA is, I think, as stated here in the packet in July, like $455,000. What do you expect that fund balance to be projected at the year end, roughly?
Board Member Bauer, I don't really get involved in projections of cash balances. We like to make sure that our expenditures are aligned with our budget, which means we won't have to dip into that cash balance. We have used that cash balance to fund the replenishment of our revolving loan programs in the past. And then we've also used that cash balance to fund the housing studies. You'll note in the budget, we basically budget and levy $5,000 every year, and that money just sort of sits in the fund balance because every 5 years or so, we go ahead and engage in that broader study, which costs, $50,000. And so we got to remember that that is also a source for that cash balance. But I don't see any major expenditure coming up in 2025 where that number will dip significantly.
Would you be concerned if that fund balance was to be burned down a little bit, just meaning that funds that go into the EDA have to end up staying in the EDA? And I wonder if that cash balance is getting approaching a large number where we maybe should think about utilizing some of that for maybe a budget year or something like that.
I would say that it is good to use that cash balance to replenish our revolving loan funds. And if we use that cash balance to reduce the budget and levy, it's decreasing our opportunities to fund other EDA programs while not impacting the levy. And every year that I have been here, so for the last 5 years, we have cut the EDA levy. And so I am at that point where I don't have anything else left to cut. And so I do get worried when that cash balance starts to decrease significantly. And whatever our policy is about how much of our budget and levy needs to be reserved in cash balance, when you consider that, we don't have that much extra sitting there.
Thank you. If I could just add, that's certainly always a possibility. As we look at those numbers, it's off a conversation we have. If that drawdown of that balance is to fund operational things that we know we're going to continue, then in future years we are going to have to make that up and potentially raise the levy again. So there's always a back and forth, and sometimes that's what you need to do. The other thing is we want to make sure, and I think we have sufficient funds in there now to cover the cash flow, because we get tax payments twice a year, so you always want to have some ability for that cash flow. But I think that's always on the table for consideration, but as Gunlack said, these are really supplying programs that we were pretty confident in keeping, unless there's a policy discussion. And if anything, you would want to use those funds to supplement some of those loan programs, which are the different funds. So it's certainly always a conversation. I think there's a caveat, though, if you use them for operating funds, you're going to have to do something unless you change the operations and no longer fund that.
Thank you.
Great. Member Schroeder.
And just a note on that, I think, and of course this comes up every year, the fund balance, and I think part of the confusion is the other funds have a percentage of where you want to have at least a minimum amount. I think our general fund, the most amount is like 50% and different things, and of course this fund is over 100% funded, and I'm not saying that's not where it should be, but I think that's where, different people have different ideas, and that might be something to think about is, say, do we want it then to say, yes, we need this to be 100% to be able to fund these things that way? It's more in that policy realm again, and otherwise you probably are going to have this come up every year.
Yeah.
Well, and I do want to say, I think we have a policy for this fund that it has to be somewhere around maybe 30 to 50% or something like that because of that cash flow issue. And I think that was the point Ms. Gunlock was making, is that actually the whole balance isn't what's available necessarily because of the wanting to maintain that policy. And we just maybe need a refresher on what that percentage is.
Yeah, that's sort of my point being, and maybe we want to take a look at that again, because I know they upped the general fund amount at one time, not that long ago.
And we certainly, we do get, I can't remember if it's part of the packet this evening for the council meeting, but it was in the last meeting, I believe, or one of the previous meetings. We had that sort of fund balance and where everything sat, that analysis. And I want to say that the EDA fund was in there, but if it wasn't, we should make sure that it was, or is going forward. Right. Member Strawn.
Thank you. As you said, it has decreased, and I was surprised and a little concerned that we are coming in so low. In the opposite realm of some of my colleagues, I guess. I was really concerned because often we get to the what else can we cut, and I was concerned that if this is the bare bones, then we have to say that, okay, we're done. We're not going to change anything. I do know it is. I live like 8 houses from a land trust home that's going on to land trust, and it's really exciting. And the neighborhoods are. It's a great thing for a house that's sat vacant for maybe 7 or 8 years. And so I want to make sure that, not trying to raise the levy, but I want to make sure that we can do the things that we have made a commitment to doing or change our plans. I know that in past years, it has already felt like you were cut to the quick. And so I'm concerned that if we cut it so close, then some of these things that we've kind of rested our laurels on can't actually happen. Then either we need to change them or we need to make sure we fund them appropriately to keep them in operation and keep them working. We don't need to just say it on the website if it's not something that can actually be funded and something that we can actually follow through.
Great. If there aren't other questions, we're not required to adopt the resolution approving the budget and tax levy at this time. It is certainly, as it is in the packet, that's something we can do. We potentially have one more EDA meeting before the September 30th deadline, or whatever it is, with the state for the final budget and tax levy for the city operations. I don't know where the board is at in terms of consideration of the budget for 2026 and tax levy for the EDA, but certainly if you want some more time to think about it.
Yes, and that's certainly your decision. I would note that even if you were to approve the resolution tonight, that's just the EDA. The city council still needs to approve it, so that decision will still come later by the end of it. So we'll have to take that intermediate step. Even if we get to September, we'll have to convene the EDA just to make a motion on this particular budget, but the council still takes the final action on the levy.
So that, just from that perspective, then, does that mean that the EDA action has to happen one council meeting before the deadline that the council has.
Or one agenda item.
Right.
Or earlier in the evening.
Okay, so we could always schedule a special EDA meeting the same evening or something like that. Okay, got it. Member Bauer.
I have a question for city manager. You know, if we take this up in here, does that limit or cause difficulties for you as you're working on your city budget? Would you like more flexibility in bringing forth this if you need to make adjustments or changes at the same meeting? I'm concerned if we'd make a decision tonight that, you know, that kind of starts closing some doors for you.
No, not necessarily, Member Bauer. I think, this is kind of a standalone budget in a lot of respects, and I don't necessarily use savings that are here elsewhere. Obviously, there's the overall levy impact.
That's more what I was
right.
thinking of.
And so having a ballpark to know where the council is, and this really isn't a significant levy impact this time around. So if you take action tonight, that's not going to limit me. And once again, we still have to have the city council approve it. But once again, that's up to you. If you're not comfortable in doing it, you want to wait, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
And just a clarification before I recognize Councilmember Schroeder or Member Schroeder. We always have the option, even if we took action on this resolution this evening, recommending the budget and levy to ourselves as the city council. We do have the option to change it between now and the official deadline. And I just wanted to double check if the EDA passes a resolution to the city council recommending a certain budget and tax levy, and the city council says, no, we want to change that before we do the final approval, it doesn't have to go back to the EDA for reapproval. It's just at that point the council can take that
They're
action.
recommending,
It's a recommendation from the EDA.
council needs to set the levy.
Okay.
That's required under state statutes.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't procedurally get ourselves in a corner without knowing it.
Good question.
Thank you. Member Schroeder.
Question on, I forgot this question when we were going through it. In the past, the Northwestern Charitable Pledge had been in there, and I noticed that that is no longer there. Has there been conversations that that's just done at this point?
Member Schroeder, I can take that. So, starting in 2014, we had a 10-year agreement with Northwestern that had.
University of Northwestern.
I'm sorry, University of Northwestern, for both charitable pledge, help economic development activities, as well as a payment in lieu of taxes. Ran for 10 years. It did engage with leadership over there, which actually turned over from when we did it originally, but and there was absolutely no interest to continue that. I think we'll continue to knock on their door. We try to stay in touch, but there doesn't seem to be any desire by them to do that.
I thought I'd ask, because I know that had been there a long time. I didn't know if it was the door was shut or if it was still conversation. And then, and actually, for the expenses that are in here, I think you've done a really good job. And I always do like the way you laid out this budget and in the detail that you do. And so I'm comfortable with, what you have in here as expenses for your budget. So that part makes sense to me.
Right. So once again, we have the choice to either adopt a resolution recommending this budget and tax levy to the council, or we can take that up at a subsequent EDA discussion.
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the resolution. This, in my opinion, is going forward tonight, and it doesn't preclude us from making changes down the road if we find that necessary. So that would be
Second.
my motion.
It's been moved by Member Groff, seconded by Member Strawn to adopt the resolution in the packet recommending the 2026 budget and tax levy to the City Council for consideration. Once again, this would be not to exceed amount, so it could always go down before the end of the year, but it can't go up. And I would note that if we discover something between now and the end of September and we need to make a change, certainly that could come back before the EDA if needed. With that, I do want to just double check one thing. We didn't provide an opportunity for public comment, so we'll pause consideration of the motion just for a moment, just to make sure if there is anyone from the public who wish to speak to the proposed 2026 budget and tax levy for the Economic Development Authority in Roseville. This would be an opportunity to do so. It does not appear to be the case. And I would note also that we will, of course, have our budget and tax hearing at the end of November, which will have everything, all the city functions in it, including the EDA. So there will be at least that additional opportunity as well as all the other budget discussions. December will be a very budget-y month, so look forward to that, and then December again. With that, then, we have the motion before us to approve the resolution recommending the 2026 EDA budget and tax levy to the City Council. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Member Groff.
No, I think, as you said, this is the first step in this part, and it can be changed if necessary, but I think that we've gone over the numbers, and I like us to have some flexibility down the road if we have an opportunity. I hate us to get down so far that if we have an opportunity, we're not able to take advantage of that because we've cut our budget so far. So that's why I support it.
Seconder of the motion, Member Strawn, any additional comment?
Again, I reiterate, I support it because I think there's a lot worse that could happen, but I want to make sure that we don't cut it so much that Director Gunlock isn't able to do the job. Then they do an amazing job, and as their budgets increase with wages and other things that we've approved elsewhere in our work, that we continue to have the ability to do the things that we have set out and made basically a pledge to our people that we're going to do.
Right, other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That resolution is approved. There is no more business before the Economic Development Authority this evening. The only other item on our agenda is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Groff, seconded by Member Strawn to adjourn. There was no discussion, excuse me, on a motion to adjourn. Very emotional moment here. With that, all those in favor of adjournment to the Economic Development Authority meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are adjourned. We'll take a few minutes to reset for the council meeting before we start that up. All right, I hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, July 14th, 2025. The roll call will stand as previously called for the Economic Development Authority meeting immediately prior to this meeting. That was all members present. We had the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the EDA meeting, so we will not have to repeat that here. So next on our council agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. And I'll check first of all with staff. Mr. Trudgeon, are there any changes to the agenda this evening from a staff perspective?
Mr. Mayor, there's no changes.
All right. And I'll check with council members. Are there any changes that council members wish to make to tonight's agenda? All right. And I should just pause. because we've had a little bit of changeover of folks in the council chambers here. Before we go to final approval of tonight's agenda, I will make a couple of introductions. The City Council is us. We have our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, who's at the end of the dais on my right. Our City Manager, Pat Trudgeon, is on the other end of the dais on my left. We also have a number of staff and other guests who will be participating in the meeting, and we will make introductions of those folks as the meeting proceeds. I do want to note that for members of the public, there is a shared copy of all the meeting materials in a large 3-ring binder in the back of the chambers on the table under the clock. That is available to members of the public to refer to as the meeting proceeds. That should be all of the materials that the council has before it to consider. Also, there are individual copies of the agenda, extra copies of the agenda. If you wish to refer to that, you can have your own copy. They're in the same location next to the big binder. And I would remind folks, if you have a cell phone, to be sure that you either silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt our meeting this evening. Now, with that, I will ask the council for a motion on approval of tonight's agenda as presented.
So, second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder, or something like that.
Yes, we agree.
Any discussion on that motion to approve the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. That then brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. I will note that as agenda items come forward, there will be opportunities for members of the public to speak to those items specifically, but we also do at the start of each meeting provide an opportunity for general public comment. This would be for items that are not under our consideration this evening or on our agenda tonight, but may be of interest to people in the community or are related to city business. So we'll check, is there anyone here this evening to speak under general public comment not related to one of the agenda items this evening? It does not appear to be the case. With that, then, we'll proceed with our agenda. That then brings us to recognitions and donations. And we have one item in this category this evening, and that is to receive the Minnesota Recreation and Park Association Award of Excellence in Management Strategies related to our Natural Resource Management Plan. And we've got our Parks and Rec Director, Matt Johnson, with us this evening to bring this before the council. So I'll turn it over to him without further ado.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I just want to introduce my colleague here, Jason Hicks, who is the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director with our neighbors in New Brighton, and also is a member of the Awards of Excellence Committee with the Minnesota Recreation and Parks Association. Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Matt. It's always nice to come here to Roseville as a neighbor to present on awards. So I thank you, Mayor and Council and City Manager, for having this honor to speak with you this evening. As Matt said, Director Johnson shared, the MRPA Award of Excellence in 2024 is awarded to the City of Roseville. Before I get to that part, I want to at least talk about the MRPA, the Minnesota Recreation and Parks Association. I had the opportunity to be here a couple of times for the Parks and Recreation Commission to share these awards and give them the same piece of information, so I want to share that with you guys as well. But the MRPA was formed in 1937 to foster the growth and development of parks and recreation profession throughout the state. Presently, there are around 850 professional, corporate, board, commission, student, and retiree members throughout the state. Members come from municipal, county, state, district, commercial, and private agencies. The MRPA was created in 1937, the Awards Committee was created in 1987 for the purpose of acknowledging individual members and agencies for their excellence in the field of parks, recreation, and leisure services. Committee members represent a broad cross-section of the members from throughout the state of Minnesota. And I feel it's important to increase the awareness and the appreciation for the excellent parks, trails, facilities, recreation programs, and services that are occurring in Minnesota. That is why the Awards Excellence Program was created. This year, it was an annual program that was solely created to recognize agencies for their staff, an exemplary project that was either implemented in 2024 or received substantial revisions in 2024. MRPA members may nominate a project for an Award of Excellence in 7 different categories, which include administrative or management strategies, communications, parks and facilities, programming events, sponsorships and partnerships, sustainability, and volunteer initiatives. Nominations are then received, are then reviewed, scored, evaluated by the awards committee members. Only the top scoring nominations receive the Award of Excellence recognition. So with that, we're here to talk about the Roseville Parks and Recreation. So on behalf of the Awards Committee, it's my pleasure tonight to present the Awards of Excellence to the City of Roseville Parks and Recreation Department for its winning project Natural Resources Management Plan Update in the Administrative or Management Strategies category. The project itself stands out due to its holistic, collaborative process that involved several city departments, community partners, and Roseville residents to design a plan that will lead to a more sustainable and resilient future for the Parks and Recreation system. The MRP Awards Committee would also like to recognize Director Johnson, who nominated this project for the Award of Excellence. With that, we do have the award plaque right here, which I think you can put up there so you can see it there.
Yeah, I don't know if we can just do that. You guys there.
It's very shiny.
Yes, but congrats.
Thank you.
Yes.
And with that, although I'm the one who was handed the plaque, I do want to take a moment and mention some key stakeholders that really contributed to this outstanding project that, as we are, 7 months into 2025, we're really seeing, for lack of a bad analogy, bearing fruit with our natural resources program. But specifically, Jim Taylor, Park Superintendent, Rachel Boggs, volunteer manager. The Parks and Recreation Commission weighed in on this a number of times. Of course, our technical advisory committee, which was made up of all volunteers throughout the community that contributed countless hours to this project. And then, of course, our partners at Stantec Consulting, which put the program together and the master plan together. So, again, it's really set the groundwork. We have grant applications out there based on that plan that we're really hoping will yield significant results. But at minimum, we're seeing great results out there in the field, and that's a testament to not me, but all those others that contributed to it. So thanks to the MRPA for recognizing us, and that's what I have.
All right, well, congratulations to everybody who is involved in that effort. I think it's a sign of how we win in Roseville by being a team together. And really, it like you said, Director Johnson, it can't be done without a significant, especially volunteer effort on the part of members of the community and all the work that they do to do the work of natural resources restoration and management in the community, but also this significant planning effort for the future. And so we really are pleased to be able to be awarded and be recognized for all that work that those individuals undertook on behalf of the community. So congratulations to everyone. We probably should have a round of applause. We don't have enough of that.
Thank you.
All right.
Photo up? Should they have a photo up?
Do you want to take just a couple minutes for a photo op? I guess we can have because the council had so much to do with it. We
Yeah,
can
let's do the council. Yeah, let's do the council up here.
Do we have anyone with a camera?
All right.
Really?
Why don't we swing around
All right,
in
yeah,
front?
thank you. Yours is probably better than mine. Yeah. You want to use yours and send it to me? All right, perfect. Yeah, let's.
Yeah, lighting is good. Lighting is good.
You gotta hold the.
Okay, it's perfect. Roseville is showing up in the back too. One more. I'll sit the right way.
Thank you.
There.
All right. With that, then we'll proceed to the rest of our agenda. We'll get into our business items this evening. We have a number of business items, the first of which is a joint meeting with our Equity and Inclusion Commission. And so we'll ask the members of the commission to come on up and have a seat at the table. Why don't we maybe just have just a few moment break in the meeting to allow for all that transition, and then we'll reconvene once we've got everybody at the table. If everybody can turn their name towards the council a little bit, so I'm thinking hopefully you know each other, but this is our first joint meeting with the whole crew, so we need to remember who everybody is.
Commissioner Chan will be introducing us with the agenda.
Okay.
All right, we just have to wait till we get back on camera here. We may have to do a little passing of the mic. Are we ready in the control room?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mayor Roll.
I'll just gavel us in here, just to make sure we're back on the live meeting for folks at home. Thank you for your patience, and I think we've got everybody, so this is wonderful. Mr. Chan.
Mayor Roll, city members, attorney, and city managers, thank you for the opportunity to present to you. This is the Equity and Inclusion Council. On our agenda, there are 6 topics. Number 1, why our work matters, will be presented by Commissioner Stanley and Singarama. Topic 2 is where we started, will be presented by our chair, Verimati. Number 3 is where we are now, presented by Commissioner LaGrange. Number 4, current priorities by our vice chair, Philip Crawford. Number 5, what we need by Commissioner Taylor. And lastly, thank you for closing by our youth commissioner, Gwen Gatlin. And we're proudly to present our youth commissioner, who was our vice chair and chair the past year. Turning it over to you.
So we're going to start off with a discussion of why this work matters, and I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Singaram, who wanted to speak about accessibility and accountability.
We will need accessibility and inclusion, and the reason why is because everyone has different needs and different abilities and different interests. And this is all throughout Roseville, and everybody wants to participate and do the same things and learn and be active and have fun. But everyone needs to be treated like an individual, because everybody has individual abilities. Just because one person can do one thing doesn't mean they can do it all. So there's got to figure out a way to accommodate everyone. Also, as we say from Stitch, from Lilo and Stitch, Stitch said Changa, which meant Ohana, which meant family. And family means no one is left behind. And this is important because in Roseville needs to be the same as one great big family where there's no one left behind. Because everyone here needs to be included, and everyone, in our events and in our community as a whole, so we can all have fun here.
So to connect to what Commissioner Singaram was mentioning, I think sometimes DEI initiatives oftentimes get viewed as maybe, for lack of a better word, describe it, the squishy side of politics. But I think in our committee's work, we've talked quite a bit about how practical the work of the commission is, because we know that when you have diverse stakeholder input into the government's functions, you're going to have more effective government. And so beyond just uniting the community together as a family, we also believe that the work that we're doing will have significant improvements to the functionality of local government. So implications for our community, I'll tell a quick story because I think we wanted to include the story. Our first commission meeting, we had a member of the community come in, which was, from what I understand, unusual for commission's work. And the community member came in and discussed how important they felt this commission's work was. And I think in our comments on the screen, we outlined a couple of reasons why. They mentioned that they felt that that it was intimidating to engage with local government oftentimes, especially for maybe marginalized groups within our community, because beyond maybe the forward-facing websites that we have that help bring community members in, this member felt that a more significant and maybe robust outreach was necessary to allow for members of her community to feel comfortable and safe engaging with elected officials and other city government officials in order to contribute their voices to kind of the tapestry that is Roseville. We believe that our commission's work does address that concern that community member brought to us on our first meeting of the commission, and hopefully by demystifying the process and creating a more open environment for our diverse stakeholders in Roseville, we can make sure that everyone who wishes to participate can and feels respected and safe to do so.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Praj. I'm the chair of the Equity Inclusion Commission, and I'm honored to be here and share about a little bit where we started and how far we've come. I hope to do a little better job than the updated council in February, where I sat up here with Antonio, where I was probably not as coherent as I could have been. I think I was nervous because that's the first time I sat up here. But hopefully we'll do a slightly better job today. Like that first bullet point alludes to, we are a new commission. We were only created in September of last year, and we only received full membership in April of this year. And with anything new, that comes with the growing pains, a learning curve, and the need for patience and perspective. Yeah, I mean, unlike long-standing commissions like Finance, Public Works, and Parks and Recreation have very tangible metrics to track, equity and inclusion is a lot more nuanced, right? It's easy to point to a new park, or a well-maintained street, or fiscal responsibility. It's hard to define whether a city is equitable and inclusive. But, I think, or whether a resident feels welcomed and heard. But I think the work, at the end of the day, is just as important, if not more foundational, because at the end of the day, we're not talking about a specific policy or a program, but we're talking about people. Whether every resident of Roseville, regardless of their background, so race, sexual orientation, disability, socioeconomic status, feels like they belong in this community and the decisions that shape it. Which is why we spent our first couple meetings not jumping to conclusions, but really building a solid base, right? Understanding what came before us, the Human Rights Equity and Inclusion Commission, the Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan, but even outside things specific to our commission, really just understanding how city government works in the first place. I think all of us, this is our first commission, right? And I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I mean, I didn't know what a commission was. I didn't know that we went monthly. I didn't know commissions had a chair and a vice chair, public comment, open meeting law. Definitely didn't know Rosenberg's Rules of Order. I think I'm still working on running our meetings better, but getting there, right? But, you have to we had to spend those first couple meetings understanding everything, because to add value, you need to have a solid foundation. I think when Antonio and I came and gave our updated council in February, there was some skepticism from city council. And, to be honest, I think some of that was rooted in partisanship. And something that you mentioned is, I think equity and inclusion can be seen as political buzzwords, which is unfortunate because I really think they're really core values of good governance, which is something you mentioned. At the same time, I think that skepticism was valid, because we haven't proven what we can do, right? We were still ramping up, still learning, and frankly, still missing members. But now I think things are a little bit different. We've been given a strategic plan in April, which is, again, only 2 months ago, and clear goals to kind of work toward. And Antonio has his core team, and we have something tangible to build on, which I'll hand over to Commissioner Lagrange to talk more about.
Thank you very much. Part of what we've been busy working on as well is creating good working relationships. I think for any type of collaboration, it takes a lot of trust building and relationship building. Is that better? To do this work, but especially when you're talking about topics that can be difficult for individuals to discuss around areas of difference in our community. And so we've been very invested in building trust within our group. We really enjoy icebreakers. We were a little bummed we wouldn't have time in the agenda to do one with you all tonight, but especially under the leadership of our youth commissioners have really gotten to build some quality trust within our commission. And so we really appreciated the strategic guidance and feedback that you all gave us in February. through that, as we've mentioned, we've been working through our work plan and sort of what's next. And so that collaboration today looks like continuing to work with our staff liaison with Antonio, and then the core team that's working within city staff to make sure that we're supporting and not duplicating efforts, that we're strengthening the work that our commission's doing as well as the core team. We really are working to make sure that this work is embedded across all that Roseville is doing and not a standalone initiative. And so if you're familiar with the SMART objective for SMART goals around specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, we'll welcome to SMARTY goals that are also inclusive and equitable. And so rather than sort of having inclusion and equity be an afterthought, it's all integrated together. And that's how we believe that long-term impact will be possible. So enjoy learning a little bit more about our next strategic priorities.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having us tonight. I'll talk a little bit about some of our current priorities. As my colleagues have already discussed, we are working with Antonio on the strategic plan and specifically around community engagement. So strategic planning is a key piece of what we'll work on right now. And specifically, again, as Commissioner LaGrange mentioned, working not to duplicate effort, but to support the effort of departments as they figure out how to evaluate their progress on community engagement, how to establish solid metrics. We also plan to work again with departments in developing effective tools and strategies to figure out where we are now to help benchmark what does community engagement currently look like in the city of Roseville and how do we compare that across departments. Because engagement with the police department looks very different than engagement with Parks and Rec. So how can we come up with metrics that can be applied and give us a solid basis to build on? And that will let us identify opportunities where we can help promote more equitable and inclusive engagement with community members and figure out how to best provide that support. And another key priority that we have right now is around open communication. Our job is not to be city ambassadors and show up at every event, but we live here and we attend a lot of different events around the city. We participate in different volunteer opportunities. So we do see it as part of our role to speak to our experience on the commission when that conversation arises and share with our neighbors and with our friends what we do and what this participation looks like and what engagement opportunities are out there.
Good evening. I'm here to talk a little bit about what we need from you all. And so as we think about moving forward, the first bullet, affirm the importance and legitimacy of the Equity and Inclusion Committee, right? Commission, sorry. In our external world right now, our work is under attack, but we also know it's so critical that everybody can achieve the same kind of outcomes or have those same opportunities at the very least, right? And so as we think about us as a commission and what tools we have or don't have around accountability and influence and these things, how can you help us with that, and how do you become ambassadors for equity in the roles that you have? And thinking about ways to do that can be through words, but actions, right? And thinking about how you are asking questions of other commissions and other departments in front of you around, what are the outcomes for everybody? What are the outcomes that we'll see across the board? Things of that nature, simple questions like that can really get people thinking and letting people know you're not going to come to the council and not have the ability to explain those things, right? Thinking about supporting our efforts to collect and standardize engagement data. So thinking about the development of metrics, we're going to need to look at data. How can you help remove barriers for us or for Antonio and his team as he's moving that forward? Data tells stories, and we can think and we can make assumptions, but assumptions get us in trouble. The data tells the story. And I think in a lot of the work I've done, like in my daily job, I do DEI work for my career. The data shuts down a lot of arguments, and I think that that's one of the ways that we can really say, it's not a feeling, it's not a perception, it's rooted in data. And this is what we're seeing help us fix these things, right? And then helping promote commission opportunities to diverse residents, right? And I think that's something that, again, it comes under that ambassador umbrella, and really helping folks understand what does it mean to come to be part of the public kind of discourse. What does it mean to be on a commission? I love the fact that we've got youth commissioners, right? I think that is so cool. That was something that I didn't realize until I became a commissioner. So just kind of constantly keeping that in the work that you do and how you are showing up, and then give us time and trust to grow into our strategic role. We're new. We're coming together as a team, and we're figuring out how we are seeing things and how you are seeing things, and aligning those in the strategic plan, and really trying to think through what that looks like. So that grace to kind of build that trust. Equity work is hard work, and you have to have that trust to be able to say the things that need to be said without maybe emotions getting in the way of good dialogue and discourse. And so those are the things that we ask of you as we move forward as a commission.
All right, thank you so much for listening to us. I hope you have a good night.
That was the wrap up.
All right. I think the next is discussion, right? Q&A? Yeah. All right. Councilmember Strahan.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you. As I sat here and looked, I'm thankful we took the time to devise the group of people so intentionally. It's obvious that you care about one another, and I think maybe that's an element we didn't spend so much time about, and definitely icebreakers and hugs and all those other things come with Antonio. But I think I am really excited about your work because I appreciated that every person had a voice, and I love having the youth voice on that. And so I think it's kind of a clean slate, an opportunity to really grow and share where you are. And so I'm very excited about that. As far as specific questions, I was wondering, have you gotten to a point where your work plan, I think, was kind of guided to be working internal to the city? And so have you started to look at things that you're going to, obviously data. What kind of data points are you looking and working toward?
So, yes, so we've worked with Antonio to look at the specific goals that our commission will focus on supporting, which again are specifically around community engagement. So at this point, what we hope to start with is kind of building an understanding of how data are currently collected. So not necessarily access to the data yet, but just understanding what kind of measurement tools exist, what are the existing metrics, so that we can work from that to build, to identify what the most effective metrics might be and how we can build things that can work across departments. Because one of the unique things about our role, as others have alluded to, is that we are working on things that form a foundational basis for engagement across departments. So we have to figure out how we can best accommodate that.
And I guess something very tangible, because you just had the discussion on the License and Passport Center. Something that you said, Mayor Rowe, is, you don't want to make your decisions on a not terribly well-informed electorate, and you said that's on us, right? Where you acknowledge that the city council could have done a better job communicating stuff. So when it comes to data, it's like, how did you communicate that with residents when it comes to ballot measures, and where can we improve on that so then they're informed in decisions that go into the city?
And I do want to apologize to Commissioner Singram that we ran late with our earlier discussion, so we weren't able to have the interpreter here for the full time. So,
I'll let her know.
All right, we appreciate her being here, and we're sorry that we ran late with everything else. We'll do better next time.
He says that's okay, that's fine.
All right. Have a good evening.
In addition, I think I would just add, is if I remember correctly from the racial equity strategic plan, there's quite a bit around, representation within the workforce and things of that nature that would be data points that we would want to absolutely see, right? And I think in addition to that, things that I would be interested in is who's being promoted, who's being given access to stretch assignments, applications, interview panels, like these types of things, representative of kind of how internally the workforce is being developed, right? And then I think that there are also community engagement things that we could be looking at as well.
I also want to mention that there's the community survey, and that's a source of data that we hope to be able to utilize. My day job is in program evaluation, so I'm hoping to take a look at, I've looked at the survey questions, and we're hoping that that's a data point that we can take a look at to figure out, again, establishing baselines of how folks are engaging.
All right. Other thoughts, questions? Councilmember Schroeder.
So when the Finance Commission was brand new, I was like one of the first people they put on it. So I totally understand being a brand new commission and having everybody on it brand new and not being on a commission. So the learning curve is long. And so, I understand that. I just want you to also understand, don't get frustrated if it seems like it's taking time. That's okay, because the city is complicated and the community is complicated. So, yes, we obviously will understand that, but we want to make sure you understand that and give yourself that grace to take the time to learn on that piece. So, yes, I understand that. And then when you talk about engagement, even back when I was new on that commission, engagement was always something that came up, and it was always difficult. How to do it and how to do it well, and I that is another very difficult area to get into. So not only are you new, you're taking on some difficult tasks to do. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing how you're going to be. And I know you're engaging internally with the departments, but the community engagement piece, I'm also going to be very excited about to hear how you're going to be approaching that. So again, thank you for being here tonight.
Councilmember Bauer.
Hey, thank you for all coming tonight. I took the time to watch from last meeting, which actually you were here not so long ago, and so there was a handful of meetings to watch, and I can definitely see some growth. I know last meeting we discussed the possibilities of having you as a committee instead of a commission to allow, as Councilmember Shore said, to grow and start crawl, walk, run, if you will, versus just having you as a commission having to run. I am happy to say that watching those meetings, I can definitely tell that you've definitely have grown and starting to run those meetings. I think you've done a wonderful job chair running that meeting. I would encourage you to step up even more and really take charge of those meetings and to run them and really determine your own agendas and the things that you want. Echoing what Councilmember Shorter, start looking at some of that inclusion piece and how do you get more of that engagement with the community and bring forth some of those items. I think you saw with the EDA meeting here too, we ask a lot of questions of staff as well of like, where's this, get some clarifications. I really encourage you to do the same with the test that you have with the commission of your staff liaison. I ask, those challenging questions to see, because the residents of Roseville are counting on that. You got to represent them just as we represent residents of Roseville. I think doing that will allow them to, or result in a really good overall fabric of, as you said, of Roseville. So that's up to you. I think there's a lot of growth in just those past 3 meetings, and definitely starting to run and look like a commission as well.
And Councilmember Groff.
Thank you for being here, and what a great presentation. Hearing all your voices was just really good to hear how you divided up some of your tasks and how you all spoke to the mission and the commitment of your commission. Of course, these are all things that are near and dear to my heart, so I appreciate the work you're doing. And I would echo the comments that, yes, it takes some time, but you've done a lot in 2.5 months. So don't forget the work you've done and build on that, of course. Because sometimes we're looking down the road so much and feel like we have so much in front of us, we don't remember that we've done a lot in the past, too. So I just think your presentation was really, really excellent tonight. I appreciate it.
Right, and just to put the cherry on top of the sundae, I think all of us on the council, I think I can speak for all of us saying that we've made some really good choices in the appointments that we've made for this commission, and we've hopefully it's because we've learned from past experience and a couple of efforts in this area that haven't quite worked out as well as we had hoped they would. So I think that's testament to all of you. Of course, we love to take credit for it, but it's really you who are learning to work together, learning what the work is and how to work together and be effective as a commission. And so we really do appreciate all that work that you're doing to live up to our expectations. And I think you're doing, as has already been said, doing a great job within the short time that you've had to come together up to this point. And we will still give you the grace to occasionally perhaps to stumble, to occasionally maybe get off on a wrong track and have to figure something out, because I think we know that that's part of the process. And so we're very confident that ultimately this can be a successful effort because in no small measure because of the work that you'll be doing and as you go forward. So we want to make sure and be that support that you've asked for. And don't hesitate to come to the council. We have the official annual meetings with commissions, but by all means, if there's something that you discuss in one of your meetings that you need clarity from us or you need some support from us with whatever it might be that you're doing or asking for, that sort of thing, please, adopt a resolution and have representatives come to the council and make a request for whatever it is and let us know what we can do to help. I was kidding about that, adopt a resolution. But have the conversation, come to a conclusion, and then send forth your representatives. We look forward to a good working relationship, and I think we all as a council want to do whatever we can to make sure that that's the case. Anything else we need to cover this evening, either from a commission perspective or from the council's perspective? Or should we just leave on a good note?
Mayor Rowe, I would like to say that Antonio Montez has been a fantastic staff liaison for us, and the progress that we've made has really owed a lot to the support that he's given us and the effective grounding that he gave us in the functioning of the city and how all of the departments work, and he's just been a great guide, so I just wanted to shout that out.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for that, and thanks to Antonio for that good work. We're just setting the bar really high now, right? So hopefully we can all live up to it. Well, thank you again for being here for this first joint opportunity to speak together, and we look forward to the continuing working relationship between everybody on the commission and the council and the city and the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Right, I'm not sure we need to necessarily take a break to sort of disassemble the commission here, but we'll pause a little bit just to get everything sort of back in place. In preparation for our next agenda item, which is item 7B, and that is to discuss potential for close proximity building regulations. Try to say that one a couple of times fast.
Yeah, right.
And with us this evening to bring this item before the council is our Community Development Director, Janice Gunlock, who's been involved in a number of discussions with a particular development in the community that has brought forward this issue for the council's consideration. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Gunlock for that introduction. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Rowe, members of the council. I do want to first start by saying I am not a building official. I am not a building code expert, and I know our building official really, really wanted to be here for this conversation, but a family commitment wouldn't allow him to be. So I think I've got a good grasp on this issue, so I'm just going to give a really brief presentation, and then I'll attempt to address any questions you might have. So the residents of the Enclave, which is the detached townhome development over on the south side of McCarran's Lake, has requested that the city enact regulations regarding structural stability of foundations built in close proximity to one another. And in this particular instance, close proximity is 10 feet. These detached townhomes are built at 10-foot setbacks from one another. Staff has indicated the city cannot enact any regulations that are more restrictive than the building code. And the building code is a part of state statutes. And the way that is written, and we did provide the statutes within your packet, it basically says, and I'll quote right from the statute, the municipality must not by ordinance or through development agreement require building code provisions regulating components or systems of any structure that are different from any provision of the state building code. HOA members have pointed to regulations that exist in the commercial building code, but these homes at the Enclave were constructed under the residential building code where those commercial standards don't actually apply. HOA members have also pointed to the city of Minneapolis where close proximity regulations have been incorporated into their city code. We did look into that. The city of Minneapolis did get those regulations approved by the state building official. And so I'm going to refer back to that state statute, the same one I read that says you can't enact regulations more restrictive. It also says that a municipality may, with the approval of the state building official, adopt an ordinance that is more restrictive than the state building code where geological conditions warrant a more restrictive ordinance. And so the city of Minneapolis went through that process with the state to get those more restrictive ordinances adopted. So city staff did reach out to the state building official to inquire about what Roseville could do to enact similar regulations. And the state building official was uninterested in engaging with Roseville on a Roseville-specific regulation, but they did commit to submitting a close proximity regulation to their technical advisory committees, who would consider adding it to the residential code with the next residential code update, which is slated for March of 2026. We understand the technical advisory commissions have met and they've recommended a close proximity regulation for incorporation into the next residential code. And we did provide the language that they put together in the packet of materials that were provided to you. So with that, we wanted to bring that information forward to the City Council to make you aware of what is going on. The HOA members have asked that something be adopted, and we wanted to advise the council that we think it is best to wait until the state takes action on the updated residential code to determine whether or not that close proximity language gets incorporated. And then if it does, we understand the path forward from there. If it doesn't, we have a Roseville-specific path that we could engage. I have some more information, but I would rather try and answer any questions that you might have. And I know there are various members here from the HOA who probably want to speak as well.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gunlock. I think you did a perfectly adequate job. Perfectly good. Well, I realized after I said adequate that probably wasn't high enough. So.
It wasn't horrible.
Yeah, no, it was a good job. So that thank you to my team of supporters here.
Hecklers.
I think definitely this type of regulation makes some sense because of the fact of literally the close proximity. I think certainly it is a unique situation in this particular development in Roseville, which did receive a variance to our code requirements to have the 0 setback on one lot and then the 10-foot on the adjoining lot. And as I think about this, I think that one of the challenges becomes the notion of if you're trying to protect a foundation structure on the adjacent lot and your foundation is right up against the lot line, what might have to be done to shore up or whatever is, by its nature going to happen on the adjoining property, which I think if we had thought more about that, perhaps at the time of setting up that arrangement, we may not have done that because of the fact that it seems like it's a bit of a challenge to do things on an adjacent property. So I just wanted to maybe get a little bit of feedback from you as a regulator in this area, and certainly in terms of how we do our codes. And this was a variance, as I said. Had we to do it over, might we have done it differently, just on the basis of what we've kind of learned up to this point?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up. And we did include the resolution approving that 0-foot setback variance as part of the packet. I think there was conversation about what could happen in that 10 feet. And I don't think anyone necessarily envisioned the excavation issues that would occur with the foundations. I am not disputing the concerns that these HOA members have. The thing I keep coming back to, it is the responsibility of our staff to uniformly and fairly enforce the building code across all of the city of Roseville. We can't veer from that authority because of a concern that's not a geological condition. So if you refer to the state statute that talks about when cities can go outside of the outside of the minimum requirements, we have to view something geological that tells us to do that. And in this case, we didn't find that. So yes, going back to your original question, would we maybe do this again? Probably not, just based on the concerns that have been raised here. But that was a unique development in the sense that it was zoned for medium density residential, and the number of units that this development produced was actually one less than the minimum density requirement under medium density. So I think as a city, we were really struggling with how does this property proceed in the best way for development based on that medium density residential without, being too dense while still meeting the requirements. And we had to actually get a comprehensive plan change for one teeny tiny lot. And the Met Council made a big stink because we were 1 unit shy of the minimum density requirement for medium density. So there's always sort of this give and take on how we enforce our regulations in service of our zoning code, in service of the building code, and in service of the best interests of the community members.
Great, thank you. Other council members with questions for staff? Councilmember Bauer.
So it's before the state building work group. They recommended going forward. Now it's going to have to be taken up by the larger body before this can be adopted as part of the official Minnesota state building codes. There's a lot of process involved there, and there's no guarantee or no assurance that that's going to actually take place, correct? That they will adopt it. In that adoption, we won't know when would we know if they adopt it or don't adopt it?
Right now, adoption of the updated code is scheduled for sometime in March of 2026. The building official and I were looking through Dolly's website on Friday to try and see if an official schedule has been published, but we weren't able to locate anything because those technical advisory committees are still meeting.
And if they choose not to do that, so that's roughly 6 months from now, or sorry, it's a lot longer than 9 months from now. If they choose not to do that, then comes back to us, we're looking at additional times. So do you feel that there's nothing that the city can do to help these residents?
I don't think there's anything the city can do as it relates to enforcing a standard that's more restrictive than the building code.
In your conversations with the building inspector, they stated that, building official, they say they didn't want to make a Roseville specific one. Was that kind of definitive, or going back? I mean, obviously Minneapolis did it. I think there's a couple of municipalities, and the state has done that too. Or was the door really kind of slammed closed on that idea?
So I did not directly have the conversations with the state building official. The building official did, but based on what he has represented to me is that, the city of Minneapolis is a completely sort of different city with different sort of issues that demand this kind of requirement being enforced there. I think the state building official said, they have a process they need to follow in order to do city-specific regulations. And they didn't want to undergo that process if there wasn't something specific or unique in Roseville, like the city of Minneapolis, that demanded us to do that, which is why they were like, well, if this is needed in Roseville, this is probably needed in all communities, so let's just go the technical advisory committee route to ask for it to be added to the residential code, because there wasn't something specific, a geologic condition or something like that would motivate them to do a Roseville specific approval. If for some reason it doesn't pass, we can revisit that. We can revisit it with the state building official at that time.
But until then, residents are kind of hoping that excavations don't hurt their existing foundations.
this. The builders will have to be careful.
And as we saw, that sometimes doesn't happen. And then do you think if we passed an ordinance requiring an additional step, like a clarification as part of like excavating next to an adjacent property, just noting we already have excavation plans, a number of other plans, builders use those to communicate what they're doing, so then we can, your department can actually issue building permits. Do you think anything that we add as an additional step counts as a increase in the building codes, such as just documenting or noting mitigations they may take place, or they may take as far as protecting adjacent foundations?
So I think it would depend on what we're asking for. If we're asking for mitigations for something that might happen related to a building system or component, I think, again, if it ties to a building system or component that is regulated under the building code, and we're asking for something more restrictive, the building code says we can't do that.
Right, which is correct. But in the things that the excerpt that you quoted, there's also at the end of that state building code also noting that protecting and maintaining existing structures and existing building systems. And I think that's where maybe we get some of this confusion, right? We have one system, right, which is being developed, the new home being excavated and constructed, and then we have an existing building system, which is one that's already there and placed. So we're in this kind of, and I believe the state building code statute here is, open to interpretation there, and there'll be some discussion, but we have both. We have one under development that's brand new, and one that we're maintaining and protecting. I wonder if there's opportunity there if we put something in that process to say, simply note what you're going to do. That way, if there is some kind of issue that's going to happen, or some issue or something happens with the builder causing problems to the adjacent structure or foundation, there's some kind of something to help the homeowners go against the builder as well, because there was something that was documented. Obviously, the city can't get involved. The city's not liable for those kind of situations. We won't take liability for that. But that step would help protect the existing residents and homeowners. And I wonder if there's opportunity for us with the statute as there. And I don't expect an answer, right now, because that needs some interpretation. But I'm wondering if that's something we should pursue.
We haven't.
I think the attorney may want to take time to investigate it as opposed to
I
try
would
to
also
answer it
not
this
ask
evening.
our attorney to make a decision on that right now.
I would defer to the attorney and what the requirement was. A couple of other things I wanted to note that I didn't note in my presentation. When somebody applies for a building permit, the contractor is required to have a license issued by the state. And then we also are required to verify that they have valid insurance. And those two steps do one of two things or both things. Allow a homeowner who's been harmed by the action of a contractor to file a claim with the state's homeowner recovery fund and or to file a claim against that contractor's insurance.
And that requires our building official to sign off on that, correct? Before that can be applied?
No. A homeowner can make a claim through the homeowner recovery fund with the state without our building official signing off on them filing that claim. Now, the state building official and the processes that they undergo to investigate that complaint, they do go back to our building official to figure out if the building code was adhered to or if permits were applied for, that kind of information.
Other questions from council for staff? Councilmember Strawn?
I'm really sad that we're in this situation. I recall being the only person who voted against this. I didn't know anything about foundations, so I still am not claiming any major expertise. I was really more worried about how one has part of their house that they have to maintain with a 0-foot setback. I think if we were in a position to be able to do this and be able to apply it across the board, I think it's a great idea. And I also think that maybe it doesn't help the folks involved right now. But if we were a little bit more firm about what our policy would be moving forward, whether or not something not allowing that 0-foot setback, or if that would impact things, maybe it wouldn't change anything here. But if we more, and obviously there's always times when there are exceptions that need to be made, but in a development of this size, maybe that's not a time to make an exception in this regard. But I just think maybe it gives us an opportunity to learn and grow from this experience. And I would hope that that would be very small solace for people who are living through this really unfortunate situation right now, that maybe someone else wouldn't have to be. But I would think that if the building official is willing to hear, I think we should move forward with it if there's the doors open at all. But if it's not, I don't see how we can legally go further without at least our attorney finding a loophole or some way for us to move forward in a way that doesn't potentially damage the city.
All right, other questions for staff? All right, I know we have a number of members of the public who may wish to speak to this item, and so this would be the opportunity for that at this time. Just remind folks the sort of the rules of the road for public comment. We do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which I try to enforce generously and gently, while at the same time firmly enforcing it, so I'm not sure how that'll work. But I also do want to note that we ask that you start your comments with your name and either street or address for the record. If you have a name that's not something that is going to be fairly easy for somebody to spell, we do have a sheet there that you can write your name on, perhaps after you're finished with your comments, just so that we've got that for the record. Direct questions and comments to the council. If there are questions that are brought up that we need to follow up with answers, we'll do that sort of at the end of the comment period, at once everybody has had a chance to speak. And also, everybody gets one chance to speak on a topic here, so keep that in mind. And if you do have more information than you can cover in 3 minutes, which you can cover a lot in 3 minutes, believe me, certainly you can follow up with written information to the council. With that, we have our first public commenter up right away, so appreciate that. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Dan, fellow city council members, city manager Patrick, and attorney Rachel. Appreciate it. First, my name is Catlin Barstad. I'm a resident of the Enclave at McCarran's on McCarran's Place West. I'd like to thank both city staff and council members for having this on the agenda from when we first brought this up back on April 14th. I would also like to state for the record that our goal here is not to slow down progress of development in Roseville, but we are asking that development be done in a manner that best protects the safety of the existing residents. We absolutely appreciate the effort that's been made by the staff to try to progress and move this forward. We agree with the proposed code change that was the language that was provided in the R401.5 that was provided to you in attachment 2, but we do continue to have concerns around the timing, the delay of it not being able to be adopted until March of 2026. As Janice had mentioned and quoted, Minnesota State Building Code site under their statutes says a municipality may adopt an ordinance that is more restrictive than the state building code, where geological conditions warrant a more restrictive ordinance. We'd like to better understand what those geological conditions are. I don't know if this was submitted to the city when the developer got the approval, but there was a geological study that was actually done by an engineering company. We'd like to submit that to the council and the staff for review. I think there's information in there that could help warrant this particular clause being applicable. I know when I first approached you guys on April 14th, we were in the front of a lot being excavated. Hindsight is now 2020. I'm sure you've all heard about what happened on Lot 7. And the concern that we have here is that there's no guarantee that when the main water line was broken by the excavator, and the rapid water flow caused soil to be eroded, there's no way that the city can guarantee that foundation walls and footings were not compromised. So I want to just bring that to your attention because that was exactly what we were trying to prevent from happening, is that soil would be eroded and foundation walls would be compromised. I also just want to remind the council members that there is no insurance company that insures against movement of earth. So this is very much something that concerns all of us here in potentially what it could expose us to in financial risk. Lastly, I just was curious about what the purpose of building codes are, and I thought it was interesting that I came across the main purpose is to ensure health, safety, and welfare in the construction and occupancy of homes. So I just want to leave you with that information as to why this is very important to us. And I would ask that the city staff would continue to see and discuss how maybe we could get this adopted sooner, because March 2026 is 9 months away. So appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? Hello and welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Follett. I also live on McCarran's Place West, and I just have a short item to bring up. It is at the bottom of attachment 1 of the extract of the minutes from the City Council with the resolution on it. It's item B. It says, "The homeowners association shall prohibit new structures and additions to the principal structures that reduce such a side yard setback to less than 10 feet." I would just like to raise the impracticality, implausibility of our doing that. Our homeowners association and architectural control committee does not currently have ability to regulate builders, and that's why we look to the permit process for enforcement of code. So I'm just raising that concern.
All right, thank you for pointing that out. Are there members of the public who wish to speak to this item?
Mayor and Council, thank you. My name is John Barstad, 217 McCarran's Place West. If I may, my background, I've got a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, been building for almost 4 decades. Target's the reason why I came into town, worked on UHG properties and so forth, and a lot of data center work. And I can tell you, data center work, failure's not an option. And that's kind of the way I look at construction, where especially with construction, it's so expensive and it's a burden. If it's not built well, it will cost homeowners usually a lot more than what they paid for. One thing, with this code adoption, I wish the equity and inclusion was still here, because I want to give him credit. The gentleman that was chairman, where he mentioned you got to build on a good foundation. That's the same with any building that you have. And one thing, as Kat mentioned with this geo report, the developer had this 9 months before he made the purchase on this. He got it on April of 2020, so he knew well in advance what he was going to get into from the geological standpoint. And you really need to, from a building standpoint, classify the soils to know what your bearing capacity is going to be. It's not so much, I want to say, the walls, but it's the bearing capacity that that foundation sits on. And the event that occurred on April, late April, during the excavation where the water main broke, flooded that trench. And I don't know what happened, if it impacted the bearing capacity on that soil. I don't believe it was pumped out before it was backfilled, and so I don't know what testing occurred. But time will tell if it's going to hold up, and if settling occurs. And this is a risk, especially what we found out. There's no insurance policy that covers for that kind of, as Kat said, movement of earth. So any owner that experiences that apparently is going to have to rip apart a house and rebuild that, paying probably more than twice that amount in what they built that. So that's very concerning to me. The Minneapolis code that was adopted, I don't know if they had to go around and get state, advocate with the state to get approvals and so forth, but it took them 45 days from the first reading that was presented to the city council to when it was approved and adopted. So 45 days, Minneapolis was able to get this pushed through, and I want to give some credit to Member Strawn. I read the minutes. You nailed it, especially with your residency in Minneapolis where they're 5 feet from one another. It's, yeah, maintenance is tough when you're 5 feet apart, but it's a lot more difficult to build when you're 5 feet apart too. And I appreciate your insight at that point in time. I understand you weren't thinking about the build process, but more or less maintenance. But thank you for those comments in that February 22nd, 2021 meeting there.
That was 1 month in.
And so I'm hoping that there must be a way to expedite this. If Minneapolis was able to do this, why can't we? Because of, as I say, the platting of this is putting 20 sardines in a 10 sardine can, it feels like. And you really just need to look at this effectively and smartly. And then the other aspect I want to say regarding the recovery fund that was brought up. Recovery fund from Dolly is what I have read in research. Currently, it's like $550,000 per contract, one time that you can tap into that recovery fund one time. And if there's multiple projects that are in error and need correction, that 550 is spread across all those projects. So you're going to get something rather than nothing, but that's a one-time deal. And I don't know what happens to that contractor's license from Dolly, but in order to tap into that recovery fund, and I've checked this from legal advice, you have to have a judgment from an attorney, from a judge, to claim that. But you can't recover that until the following year once you've made your repairs. So the owner's, again, still on the hook to make the repairs, and they can't get insurance to cover that, but you can get whatever a dollar amount recovery apparently the following year. So just want to make sure the council is very well aware of the process in that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? All right. We'll close the opportunity for public comment. I think, as I've been hearing the comments, one of the things that seems to me is that there's sort of the general building regulation issue, and then there's the sort of what happened with this water main break, and what do we know about it? And I'm just wondering from the city perspective, what is required to deal with the break like that one happened. Clearly, it's an emergency situation, but I'm presuming that there are things that have to be done to mitigate a break like that and to make sure that we understand the impacts. And so I'm wondering, from a city perspective, what our requirements might be in that regard, because it seems to me that may be something that we have that we can talk more about than perhaps the general building regulation as specific to this particular instance. So I wonder, Mr. Trudgeon, if you have the ability to answer that, or if we can otherwise get some staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure I can exactly answer that, but we can go back and review what we've done and share that with the council and to the neighbors as well. And I think we've had some conversation with that, but I would have to go back and really talk to everybody and look at what we did when that occurred. Obviously, the first priority was to shut off that water main, so stop it, but I think you're talking about the after effects and how that impacted the neighbors as well.
Right. Well, and I'm just thinking about it, if we have a water main break under one of our streets, and we've got to make sure that we do a repair on the street that's drivable and is going to be, able to be functional going forward. I'm assuming we have some standards that have to be met in that regard. I'm just wondering if a water main break happens sort of on one of these developments on a property, what do we have standards? Are there other standards? Just to understand that a little better, because maybe that's something that we need to look more closely at in relation to this situation, because absolutely I can understand the concern specific to that event, not knowing what's going on. I would like to hopefully be able to have a better sense of that. Yeah. So I wanted to sort of separate that from the from the more broad discussion, because maybe that's something that we can look more closely at and have potentially, maybe not, something more to be able to do in regards to.
Sure. So we'll go through that information and share that with everybody here. I would suspect it would probably more be on the building code side of issues when you have impacted soil that with moisture, but that's as far as I want to go. I'm not even sure on that. So I would like to take a look at that.
For sure. But I would, it just seems to me that there ought to be some kind of standard that has to be met in mitigating or remediating the situation once the emergency of the break has been stopped, before fill is put in and some things like that. What are the steps that have to happen? You know, even if we find out there's maybe nothing we can do in regard to that, but just understanding what that process is would be helpful for us and maybe for the residents as well. So I just wanted to note that. I did want to double check on if I had made a note about any other question that came up, just to be sure. So I'm presuming that the city, if we haven't already seen it, would probably appreciate getting that geological study that was done, to have that. Okay, so if we've got that, so just wanted to follow up on that.
So you're requesting staff to take a look at that and see if it meets the requirements?
I'm just making sure that if because the offer was made to provide it to us, and I was checking to see if we had it, or if we need to get it, and just.
in the room, but Jesse, right, we have that.
Mr. Freihammer, do we have the geological study that was done prior to the enclave development that the developer had?
I believe we have a copy of it now.
Okay, all right. So to the extent, I think the question that was raised by the residents was if there's anything in that tells us anything that might be able sort of to be the thing to hang our hat on in terms of local regulations because of that clause about the geological conditions, something to look at. So I think that's a follow-up item if I understood that. All right, I think that hits the items. And, you know, as far as the clause in the resolution that put an onus on the homeowners association, I do understand that the association may have been set up by the developer sort of prior to their being homeowners, and so the developer may not have been diligent about making sure that something to that effect was in the HOA, you know, documents or whatever. So certainly that is something that that the association would want to try to assert going forward in your existence. But it was very interesting to note that, and thank you for pointing that out. Other thoughts from the council or feedback maybe to staff on this item going forward? Councilmember Bauer.
I'd be curious to know what the rest of the council thinks, but I would be interested in investigating, 9 months out. I'd be curious for you to do two things. One, to see if the door really is shut on making a Roseville only thing. I think the sequence of events, if we can use the geological study as the thing, as you mentioned, to hang our hat on, that does make the most sense. There's already law there for that. If that's not met, I'd be interested to know if the door is closed to do something that's Roseville only, as far as adopting the wording that they have that they're proposing from the working group earlier for us, especially since it's already been adopted, maybe to cover the time gap that it currently exists. So I'd be interested to have staff look at that and find that answer. And then if that fails too, I'd be also interested to know, can we put something in, as I mentioned earlier, as part of the building permit process, just to say, to list out what the mitigations are, and that would be an investigation, with the attorneys to see if there's opportunity in that Minnesota statute for that.
As far as not having a requirement in our code per se, but more a requirement for documentation of something.
Correct. And my argument and assertion is that doing such is not creating a more restrictive building code, because such an action in ordinance is not a building code ordinance. It is much more of a procedural thing, procedural item. But that's where it would need some clarification.
So whether we could say require that as a piece of information that goes with the permit.
We have other things, there are other things. There's, tree ordinance, things like that. I wonder if we could put something else in there. The tree ordinance is different, so but we have these. Tree ordinance falls under something else. But I'm wondering if we could just put that there. This way, we can maybe help the residents with if there is something catastrophic that does occur, there is something that's a document that was an some kind of agreement in place that they may be able to use to better help their civil suit.
Right. And I don't know whether it would be an agreement necessarily or a plan of some sort, but usually I'm guessing what we require for our permits has to be tied to the things that we regulate. So I'm not sure about that. But if the request is to get some feedback from staff and our legal counsel as to what we may or may not be able to put in that regard,
yes, again,
if that's the request, we
because
could
I think
certainly
there
ask
is
about
there
that.
because we're in a situation where we have the statute says an existing structure and building systems and also new, and we're in a situation where we have both. But the statute, I believe, is written thinking there's just one. So I'm not sure if that's feasible, but I would be curious to do that as a stopgap if the other two do not happen.
I think at least, unless there's any objection on the council, we can request more information about what we can do in that regard.
Yes, and I think it's important to bring the city attorney in that to have the official guidance on that. So we'll work with Ms. Attorney to walk through the issues. I think she's somewhat familiar with it too, but we'll.
And I'd be happy to discuss it with you as well.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else from the council? All right, I think we've got a few things that we can take a look at. With that, maybe to summarize, see if there's a way we can adopt the proposed state language earlier, talk about whether there's additional documentation requirements we can make as part of our permitting process without necessarily those being code requirements that we can't do in contrary to the state, and then also look at the geological study and see if there's anything in there that maybe is something we can look at under that exception under the state code for something local, and then also the discussion about mitigation of the original water main break that they had and what was or wasn't done or what we did or don't require as far as how that's handled. Mr. Treasurer.
Just a clarification on that. The last part about if there's geological conditions. My understanding is the state building official still needs to approve that.
Oh, understood.
Okay.
I guess the question is there something in that study that indicates, quote unquote, the unique geological
go back to
conditions
the state building
that
official.
allow us to request something Roseville specific from the building inspector, the building official,
State building official, yeah.
different than what their preferred process
That's
is.
helpful, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we got it. Thank you again to everyone who is here this evening and the council for the discussion. Councilmember Strawn, did you want to take a break? All right. Yeah, we are past our 8 o'clock break time, so we'll take about a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
All right, we're back from a short break here and ready to take up our next item on the agenda under business items. This would be a consideration of possible changes to the city streetlight policy. And we have our Public Works Director, Jesse Freihammer, with us this evening to bring this item for the council's consideration. Mr. Freihammer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Roseville streetlight policy was most recently adopted on March 4th, 2024. It was intended to support public safety by providing consistent, equitable, and technical sound lighting throughout the city. At the request of council, staff reviewed the city streetlight policy to evaluate if it would be appropriate to add a petition to allow residents to request removal of an existing or proposed streetlight. So I'm just going to give a real quick presentation on kind of some of the information we found. So really, our standard street lighting, just a real quick review, is really just at intersections, curves, and marked crosswalks. With the new policy, there's 146 new installations that would be proposed for intersection lighting. Crosswalks that we had, I think we did 15 or 16 of them, were done in 2025. And then the overall plan was to install the intersection lighting over the next 5 years. So we did notify everyone in the 2025 notification. We did hear 3 locations that had some concerns, and I think that's why we have the topic before us. In terms of the street light removal procedure, we don't currently have anything in the ordinance, so there's really no, the only way to do that is go to have a council decision on that. So we did reach out to all the cities in Ramsey County. We didn't hear any direct feedback from any of them having a process to remove intersection lighting. Some do have it for mid-block lighting. You know, if you have one every 600 feet, that seems to be a pretty consistent one, but most cities consider intersection lighting part of their standard and what they require for safety. The only 2 cities that we did find locally, there's Minneapolis. They have a very detailed policy. Theirs is extremely detailed. They have a lot more variety of lighting than we do, a lot more lighting than we do. But their streetlight policy has a petition process to do it, and then it's based on a level of lighting. So I did include that on the right. That's kind of the chart they have, and then kind of their procedures that they have. They do have a very high threshold. It is 100% petition of everyone who's on that front footage. So it is still a very high threshold to do the removal, and then it relates to a light standard. The city of Moorhead also does have a petition process. They refer back to a street technical committee. I'll say it's more of a procedure because their technical committee says they're going to review it to make sure it meets consistency. So if it says you're supposed to have one on the corner, it's on the corner, it's still going to meet the policy. But they do have a process to review. I think that's in case maybe there's too many lights per block, but that was their process. But like I said, none of the adjacent cities in Ramsey County had anything specific to removal. So with that, I will open it up to any questions. Certainly answer any questions the council may have or look for any direction council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mr. Freihammer. Questions from the council? Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. When you looked at the ability to have people remove it, was there any subsequent request to have them put in? Are you aware? So maybe 100% of the neighborhood in one area said, let's not have a light, but over 10 years' time, a bunch of the people changed hands, and now those people wish to have that light reinstalled.
I guess we didn't ask that question. Like I said, most cities considered it part of their standard lighting, so they don't really ask if it goes in. Their policy says lights go at intersections. They install it either with a development or as part of a street reconstruction or whatnot. Okay. I know previously our previous policy it was basically asked to put it in. One of the reasons we did draft the policy as is so we're more fair on where the lighting is, so it's not only if people who ask get it, because there was I think we had I can't remember if it was 100% petition to get one in, but that would have precluded some areas that potentially could have had lighting, but if you didn't have all your neighbor support, you couldn't get a light. But that way it was more standardized on what quality of lighting we have at intersections and crosswalks.
And I probably should recognize Councilmember Groff because this is the item that he requested before the council. Thank you for your indulgence.
Sure. The reason I brought it up is I did only get contact from people that did not want the lights. And there weren't very many. I think this would be an exception. I don't think this is something that's going to have a lot of people contacting us saying we don't want the lights. but the one is on the corner of Marion Road and the frontage road for the freeway. And I included a picture of the freeway light there because the light we would be installing would be just across the way from that. That light is considerably higher. It just seems like a lot of redundancy. So there are some places where it would be very redundant. If you used a light meter, it would be way more light if you're talking about safety or walking or anything. That whole area is lit up already. So that is the reason the resident there asked for it. And I think 100% of the people would sign that and say, no, we don't need a light here. Why spend the city money if it's not needed? It's just a small amount of money perhaps, but they see it as a tiny way to save money. I think the other thing is it's just good when we're making policy to have resident input on something. And obviously they have the standard ability to do input, but when they feel that things are decided for them and there's no way for them to appeal for us to make a reasonable decision after the fact, it kind of bothers the residents. So I'm just bringing that subject forward. And also just, streetlights, do we need more things that are visual clutter if they're unnecessary? And then, of course, there are the costs that are involved. You have to replace streetlights. We could make the streetlight budget go a little further if we didn't place them where people really don't want them. So those are the arguments I've heard from residents, and that's why I asked for some mechanism from the council. Maybe it could go before the Public Works Department. Their light meter could be used, and if it's already meeting the light standards, do we really need to put one in that area? And I don't think it would take a lot of staff time because, like I said, I've only had 3 requests.
Other thoughts from council members or questions? Councilmember Braun?
I think that's
Bauer?
Good evening. I think it's an interesting point Councilmember Groff makes. I do like the idea, like if there was a, some threshold, meaning that enough adequate light was made in an area that maybe that was allowed for an exemption and an opportunity for residents in those areas to, not request a streetlight not be placed there. I think that is an interesting thing, especially from what you're showing here with an existing MnDOT light right there. So I'd be in favor of having Public Works Commission taking a look at this.
Other thoughts, Councilmember Schroeder?
Well, I do like, the idea is we really need to make sure we can measure something. So if it is based on, is there light already there, that's easily, that you can say, yep, it's this whatever, lumens or whatever it is. And because I think that's probably, if that's the standard in there, I think that would be easier, because you want to make sure we don't make it difficult for staff if we have other vague reasons in there. So I think we want to make sure it's very measurable. So I think that's important, and keep it narrow. I think that's the other piece too.
Right. I did have a question, and I'm not sure to whom this will be directed, maybe Mr. Trudgeon to start with. Is there an appeal process for, I know under the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, we oftentimes handle appeals of land use type decisions. Obviously, the installation of a streetlight is a public works decision. I'm wondering if that's something that's also appealable to the city council already in our code through some sort of either the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, or if it has, or if it's just a more general appeal of city actions. I don't know if we know that, but I would be curious to know more about that.
Without the code in front of me, certainly the Board of Adjustment and Appeals deals with zoning issues. There are other opportunities that are stated in the code for a variety of things, imposition of fines and things that can come to me, but that's very specific. Not sure where this would fall, and perhaps unless Ms. Tierney has an answer now, we would have to take a look at that to see if there's any absolute ability to do that. Nothing's coming to mind that jumps to me, but
Sure.
maybe there's some statutes that would allow or code.
Well, and certainly we could put this in our policy. That's the easy answer, I guess, is to put it in the policy for this particular issue. Just a couple of observations. One is I get very concerned about providing people the opportunity to opt out of safety requirements. I think the reason we have this policy is for safety at our intersections, and to start to say, well, some intersections we don't care if they're safe. That may be an oversimplification, but that's kind of an impression people could get, and I think there might be some concern about that. And I will say that I did drive through that area fairly extensively in the dark one evening earlier this year when the issue came up. And without streetlights there, local streetlights, those 35W lights do not light the street. I drove it and I parked and I turned off my headlights and there wasn't anything coming from the 35W lights. They do a great job of lighting 35W, and I'm sure that they're visible to residents from their windows. They can see this light source on the top of the pole. But honestly, when you're along that street and there's no light source from your car, it is dark. You can't see other people, you can't see land features. So I would be concerned about providing an exception in this particular case because of that issue, but more broadly because of the notion of sort of providing exceptions to safety. If we tied it to something, a metric, maybe I might look at that. But I would want to make sure that it's not a metric that every single situation the city meets, because that's not what we're looking for here. So I maybe I'm going to be the spoiler of the party, but I would not be in support at this point of putting an exception in, just based on those observations and the notion of what this policy is. Councilmember Schroeder.
Well, and now that, especially since you say that the safety has got to be number one, and yes, it's the residents, but it's also other people who might be walking or driving through there too. They would have an expectation of it being a safe area as well. So you make a very good point.
Your thoughts, Councilmember?
I guess I would have to say, living on that block, that particular corner I'm talking about is lit up. And I do walk that area. And I don't know if you stopped there at that particular corner. If you stopped a block away, where they have installed the light, it was necessary. Because Acorn Road is a dark corner because of the way the curve goes there.
Yeah, no, I looked at several, because you're right, there was, because of the road project in that area, several lights were installed earlier or late last year, whenever that project was done. But I looked at those locations as well as the locations where there aren't lights right now. And specifically along the frontage road, next to the noise barrier, yeah, it was pitch black when I stopped and turned off my headlights. And that was right at that intersection.
Okay.
So, but there's a perception, because it is very bright in your peripheral vision on the other side of the sound barrier.
That's why I would tie it to something like a light meter or something, because I think the way our eyes work is not the same as that. But, and as far as safety goes, they would not be walking along that freeway wall. I can assure you, if people do walk at night, they would walk along the residential side.
Sure.
But that's not an area. It's one way in and one way out, so you don't have people who don't know that area driving around in there. That's why it's only this one thing, yeah, except for the mayor, to check it out, which is a good thing. But that's why I think it would be not used very often, and I would just like some mechanism that had a measurement involved that would allow people that had that much light to say, we don't need it here.
it would be interesting to actually do some measurements in that area and just see what we do see, because, I mean, certainly all I can report is my perception.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was thinking if somebody was walking along the intersecting street and came to that corner, I would have no idea if they were there in that situation. Obviously, I would be driving with my headlights on, I should be clear. But that's the case across the city, and we still require streetlights for safety at intersections because of the potential for lack of visibility of somebody until they get into your headlights and those sorts of things. So, like I said, that's my concern, and I definitely don't want to sort of just have a get out of safety free card, so to speak. I think we need to be more thoughtful about whatever we might put in place. So if there is some sort of standard we could tie it to, and we could understand what existing conditions are, we could talk about that. I'd be okay bringing something back for some consideration, but I'm highly skeptical at this point.
A standard of lumens or something that's a light measurement that's recommended, if they have that available. I didn't see that in the packet, but I would like to know what that would be.
Sure, and there is something in the Minneapolis policy, I think, along those lines, but Councilmember Strawn.
Well, as someone who generally walks after dark, because I can't seem to get my act together before that, there are certain streets that it is scarier to walk on because it's very dark and you're like, what is that over there? And, I'm generally walking with someone else and two dogs, but I think we as far as safety, it shouldn't be if you ask for it. I think it should be part of it. So I think if there was an opt-out, I think it should be a specific, if you abut Harmar Mall, then you probably have enough light coming into your property, and you probably have a light there anyway. But I do think that just making sure that we have it equitable, and I'm more worried about over time, if we don't put in a light or we take out a light, that the makeup of the neighborhood would change. Maybe there'd be a severe incident that would happen in that neighborhood, and suddenly everyone's much more, then we're reactive than proactive. And so I can certainly see situation by situation. Jesse, are you able to bring back the light year, the year where they were?
Map.
The map where they're, because we don't, yeah.
Yep.
So just and maybe just more intentional about where the plan is. But I would not advocate for changing removal of mid-street lights, just because I think we can be as conscious as possible about, and I know we do a good job about trying to make them be down lights, and we, make sure they're as safe as possible. And I know there are people who don't want city lighting, but we don't have sidewalks, and by and large, and so I'm walking on the street in the dark. And so I'm relying, and often I'm out there with the deer and the rabbits and everything else, but I'm also relying on there being a consistent safety standard on any block that I walk on, not just, the ones that I know are, going to be the same. And I would want that for everyone else who can't get their act together before 9:30.
And is definitely, this plan is almost exclusively intersection lights from what I can see.
Correct. It's only intersection lights. That's really the only true standard lighting we have is intersection lights. Mid-block lights, as the policy indicates, are desirable and should be considered for replacement if the spacing between existing lights is greater than 600 feet. If the above conditions are met, an individual property owner may circulate a petition if 60% consensus, then it could get built if it meets the standards.
For a mid-block light.
For mid-block. So mid-blocks aren't guaranteed. We know we have a lot of longer blocks that do not have mid-block, but since it's not standard lighting, we don't just put those in. The only standard lighting is intersection lighting.
And I wouldn't see this as someone requesting removal of lights, because for one thing, I haven't heard of anyone asking for that. I'm just seeing it as if it's not a light there when they're notified, if they could prove or could ask for a light meter to be
I'm sure
shown
there's a standard,
that
yeah.
it meets the standard of lighting that wouldn't need to be installed.
So I guess from the technical point of view, this may be a question for staff. Is there a standard that our overhead intersection lights have to meet as far as the lighting of the area?
So we don't. We refer to Excel. We just work with Excel. They use I can't remember what watt LED at the intersections. They do a little higher level at busier intersections like county roads. So we could work with them on what the appropriate number is. I don't know. Looking at Minneapolis example, I don't know if that's 0.3 to 0.6 is the appropriate number. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around there because that's a residential area. I'm assuming that's at an intersection. We could certainly investigate what that number is if Excel, otherwise, if we do go down this road, we could see what the average residential intersection in Roseville is to make sure it's appropriate.
Lit Roseville intersection.
Yeah, Roseville intersection. Because, like I said, they're typically all done with the same traditional light. Like I said, unless it's a larger intersection, then it has a larger one. But a residential is like a 15-watt LED Cobra head fixture.
Okay.
So that is feasible. I mean, it could be feasible, and then we add a chart like this or something. That could be an option.
I think, if we can come back with some information for the council to take a look at, we can consider policy unless there's objection from the council
Do you want to
proceeding
come
any
back to
further.
council or go to the commission?
Well, I think it should come back to council since the council adopted the policy.
That's fine with me. I was just getting clarification.
Because I think we're looking for information. I mean, if we want to then refer it to the commission, I suppose we can do that. But since we're asking
started
the
the
question,
conversation,
yeah.
I think it might be more sense to do it here.
Okay.
All right. Staff have an understanding of what the council's looking for. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. That brings us to item 7D, which is under the area of finance, which is to have our first look at the 2026 to 2045 Capital Improvement Plan, otherwise known as the CIP. And we have with us this evening our finance director, who's been patient and waiting through a number of other items to bring this item before us this evening. Welcome, Ms. Petrick.
Thank you. At the dais, you will see 3 sheets of paper which have updated numbers simply because when they printed, the numbers were too large, so hash signs printed. All right, so this is your preliminary look at the 26 to 45 CIP. A CIP, or Capital Improvement Plan, is a long-term plan for replacing city infrastructure, facilities, vehicles, and equipment. It includes assets that are necessary to maintain current city programs and services. Key assumptions are that city programs will remain at current service levels. Also contains a number of assumptions with regard to asset life spans and replacement costs. However, departments do look at their items each year. This is the first step in the budget process, and departments will update the values to today's value. They will also move projects back if they don't need to be replaced at this point in time. And if there are vehicles or projects that are failing that are scheduled in out years, they will bring those forward. So the 20-year plan is totaling $260 million of expenditures. City of Roseville is one of the few cities that does a 20-year plan, and I generally advise people don't rely on numbers beyond year 5 because we do not know what inflation's going to do. However, this is a $26 million increase from last year's plan, or an 11% increase. Some of the changes in funding sources that are being proposed include decreases in the Administration Equipment Fund, the Finance Equipment Fund, and the Central Services Equipment Fund. We evaluated the needs in those 3 funds, and there are sufficient reserves to meet at least the next 10 years. In the case of the Finance Equipment Fund, there is a large expenditure out in 2040 that will likely continue to be moved out. That's the replacement of a finance software system, which we just implemented. But those generally get replaced every 15 to 20 years. The total CIP breaks down into the city functions as shown in this chart. The largest chunk of our infrastructure is in the water and sewer funds, and that also includes the stormwater fund, should say the utility funds. Streets and pathways make up our next largest area of CIP. That would be roads and paved pathways. Looking at the CIP over the course of the 20 years, again, you'll see the utilities fund is the largest number. Other than in year 2042, facilities takes a huge leap, and that's for the replacement of the refrigeration system at the ice oval. The funds that are in the utility funds cannot be used for tax-supported funds. So this chart is strictly looking at those funds which are supported by property taxes. And you will see we have funding for the next 9 years at this point in time. So some of the funding strategies that we've internally discussed, some have been proposed by the council. We did make some minor adjustments in the tax levy. City Manager Trudgeon and myself were looking at potentially increasing tax levy in a few funds. And at this point, we have decided not to include that. We will be looking at the utility funds. The CIP projects are factored into the utility rates, and Ellers, who did our utility rate study last year, did use our existing CIP. So we will be bringing back utility rate adjustments later this fall. Some future funding strategies that will need to be considered in the next few years are increasing property taxes to a handful of funds, potentially issuing debt to fund certain capital asset replacements, and in the case of the Oval, continued ask from the state to be included in the state bonding.
And if I could just jump in here, one thing that isn't on here, but I'm aggressively pursuing is franchise fees. In fact, I'll be meeting with the Representative Excel on Wednesday and see how much we can sort that into this budget cycle here. So that's another alternative funding strategy that if we were able to implement that, we would be able to shift some of that levy that's currently going into the operation sides to forestall a levy increase, and that's a sustainable process. So more to come on that, but that is also something we're very seriously, aggressively looking at.
So some additional considerations with examining the CIP. The funding strategies should be considered in conjunction with the operating budgets. We do adopt a total budget, which includes both capital and operations. The city manager's recommended budget and CIP will be presented on August 25th. The preliminary budget / CIP and tax levy is scheduled for council approval on September 22nd. The council must adopt a property tax levy by September 30th. Continued work does occur after September, and we do bring back a final budget and CIP with a final tax levy at some point in December, yet to be determined. As a reminder, our truth in taxation hearing can't occur in November unless you move your meeting to a date other than Monday. Because unfortunately, the Monday meeting is a day too early, according to state statute. So, and that's all I had.
All right. Questions for staff on the next 20 years of capital needs and funding? And I'm sure that Ms. Petrick would really love a detailed question about a particular expenditure in a particular fund in a particular year. Right, exactly. In year 19, exactly. Councilmember Schroeder, for that.
Oh, come on. Oh, okay. And we have had some interactions already, so I will once again not do 86 questions while I'm sitting here. But and thank you for printing these out again. I think it's probably one of the few that noticed the little X's, because I think that was in year 19. So yes, I did notice that. And before and the franchise fees, I'm glad we're reviewing that, because just about every city when I was up in Duluth, almost every city I talked to was doing it already, and everybody around us is. So it's not unusual. So thank you for doing that. But the one thing I did want to ask was, especially in the water fund and the sewer fund, and you've mentioned it in a few places about the idea of possibly doing debt to pay for some of these big projects. I thought it would be interesting to see if we could take our spreadsheet and put that in and say, if we decided to do debt as on a couple of these, what would that look like for the funds? So that would be something I'd like to request, is to see what that would do to the numbers.
And Councilmember Shorter, is that beyond what's already been shown there?
Yes, because she talks about that, in here, you may consider bonding or you may consider long-term debt. And then under one of your strategy is it says possibly use a debt financing for longer-lived assets. So I guess it's almost like doing a little modeling around it just to see some of these, especially it's mentioned in a couple of these funds.
Yep.
But how would that, and obviously then you have debt and you have to pay for that. But how would that look if we modeled that in?
Yeah, and based on the discussion, from last meeting, we will be doing that. We haven't officially started doing that, but we'll be looking at other funds where there's big expenditures and
Right.
where it would be advantageous, and just kind of test it a little bit and see how that would look like. So
Yeah,
more to
so
come.
I'd like to see that
Yeah.
when you do that.
Yeah, one of the dilemmas with issuing debt, like for tax-supported equipment, is you do have to actually raise the tax levy to pay for the debt service. So I played around with it a little bit, but need to spend a little more time modeling that. And in the case of the utility funds, at one point in time, Ellers had recommended bonding for the water fund specifically, and I do believe also the sewer. But then, based on rate increases, based on curtailment of actually doing capital projects, our reserves had gotten to a sufficient level that we didn't need to issue debt. And, we do have utility rate increases programmed, so when the council does make the decision not to increase a rate in accordance with the study, or to in fact decrease the rate like we did last year in the storm water fund, that could impact the funds potentially further down the road. So I'm trying to model that as well, whether we stick with what Ellers recommended for utility increases, or whether some of the funds we can bring in with a 0% increase this year.
Well, and that's 'cause especially, with Eller suggesting possibly using bonding and also the Finance Commission, but I've been thinking about it too. And it's hard to know unless you actually do the modeling because you're right, there's pros and cons to it. So I guess that's what it comes down to is let's if we could do some modeling on it, and I'd be interested in seeing that.
Yeah, certainly in the water fund, there's a fairly big expenditure
Right.
in 28 that
Right.
might, whatever those series of projects are, maybe some portion of it could be done with debt.
Exactly.
Because that helps the fund stay more even in the following years.
Yep.
All right, Councilmember Grau.
Thanks for getting back to me on those couple easy questions today. I don't need to go over those, but I just wanted to speak more to what we're discussing right now about the issuance of debt or bonds. And just to reiterate that if we did use that, it's for larger items or for things that are amortized over a long period of time, like 10 or 15 years. It's not some
Or
small
longer.
amount to fill a little thing, because there are costs involved in that will make it not worthwhile. And I think that's what you've been saying. Am I correct?
Yes. You do not want to issue debt for operations. You do not want to issue debt for assets that don't last at least as long as the debt issue. Hopefully longer.
Right.
We do try to be very aggressive with keeping our debt schedule short. And you'll see this next week when we actually issue the equipment notes for to pay for the fire engine.
It's like it's a mortgage kind of.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, so exactly, that's,
Yes,
and that's,
you want
yeah.
the item to last longer than the.
You do, yeah, and it, if you
Yeah.
think of it as like a mortgage, that's exactly how you want to use debt.
Yep. In the as it's been described, I think even by our Finance Commission, it's having future ratepayers pay for an asset that they're going to be using, as opposed to sort of using savings, which is past ratepayers paying for something that they may or may not be using.
Correct.
But anyway, so that's another way to think about it as well. But you do have to pay for the privilege of it.
Right.
the
Yes.
interest rate is the cost on top of the asset itself that those future ratepayers are paying.
Correct.
Yeah. Councilmember Bauer.
Do we need financial modeling as well for the franchise, or using the franchise fee as well? I'd be curious to know how you're, you don't have to answer now, but I'd be curious to know what you're thinking of using that for to offset and maybe modeling that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Bauer. So the first thing is to understand kind of what we would potentially get in the range of cost. And I think, at least in my mind, I'm primarily looking at the street fund to transfer that dollars. We put, what, $1.1 million of levy
every year.
Every single
Yeah.
year. And
Mhm.
if we are able to cover that with franchise fees, that does free up a significant portion that can be repurposed without having to raise the levy. So that's where I'm at right now. I've tried to do some back of the napkin estimate of what that amount is, and I wouldn't guarantee it at this point. We need to sit down with Excel and get a better sense of, and we do have some ability to either do a percentage, is my understanding, or a fixed dollar amount. Most cities seem to do a fixed dollar amount per account. So once you kind of get those account numbers, you can start calculating a little bit better. So yes, we would be looking at that then. Okay, how much can we raise, and where would that potentially go? And then from there, we can make some informed decisions as with my recommendations, but also your final decision of what you want to do. And there is a process to set up an ordinance and all that stuff, but that can follow after get some analysis done to see if it's worth pursuing.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions, Councilmember Groff?
Just a thought on that. So when you do it on a fixed amount, is that considered more like a regressive tax then, because it's not a percentage?
I suppose so. Depending if you do, what I've seen is like $3 or $4 per month to an account. So whether you use a lot or not, income doesn't factor. Everybody's treated the same. If it's a percentage of your utility bill, then again, that may not be tied to their socioeconomic status. This is what their use is. My understanding is most cities have done the fixed fee, and I don't know exactly what the rationale is.
Thanks.
Well, and I did come from a city that used the percentage franchise fee, and the reason they stuck with a percentage was because the homeowner had the ability to adjust their consumption if they so choose. But the percentage worked out to a couple bucks on the bill anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting to sort of think of it from both perspectives, because the flat amount may end up being, as you're saying, more adversely impactful to, smaller users. So yeah, it's kind of like what we look at with our fees on our water and sewer, the base fees. Want to make sure you're not being excessive with those for low users. I did have a question on the sanitary sewer fund. So I remember, I should use my old man voice.
Yeah, I remember.
Maybe I use that every day already.
Back in the day.
I remember a time when we actually were transferring money from the sanitary sewer fund to shore up the water fund, because the water fund was struggling. And then I opened up my 2026 to 2050 or 2045 CIP, and the sanitary sewer fund goes negative in 2 years.
Yep. Yeah.
What did we do wrong?
Well, that was about 12 years ago.
Oh, that's part of it.
But when we did the first utility study, we did it for water and storm. And then when we did the next update, we did include the sanitary sewer fund. Just to remind you, there was a 0% increase for 2 years in this fund. So that's one contributor. The other contributor is that this is the end of the Public Works curtailment of capital projects. Because this fund did have a problem, and then we adjusted the rates, and Public Works went to a bare minimum on their projects. We're now at the $1.2 million number that they need for sewer relining. And the cost of the sewer lining has increased significantly, so they have a plan. They're supposed to be doing X number of miles every year. They were only doing this many miles instead of this many. So we'll have to look at the rate increases for that fund.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know if Mr. Freihammer can answer this, but have we crossed the threshold where lining is now not as advantageous as excavation and replacement, or are we still significantly higher for excavation and replacement? I'm guessing I know the answer to this.
Lining by far is still the way to go. Costs have gone up dramatically since COVID, mainly because I think there's less supply. But yeah, our costs have gone up dramatically, and I don't think we've raised that line item since like 2015. So which is why we requested it, because I think, I don't have the exact number, but it was like 240% the costs have gone up since 2015.
Okay.
So,
So
and
we
we're
need
not
to be more diligent in our updating of our costs.
Yeah, so we've kept it flat, and as Ms. Petrick had mentioned, we did curtail it for a couple of years, but we are getting back into, we want to be proactive. One of the reasons we do the lining is if we're proactive enough, we don't have any large issues and have to, go fix something underneath. We're really right now proactively trying to line sewers underneath Trunk Highway 36, Snelling Avenue. We don't want to go close one of them down.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and we're not the only ones that are doing more of that.
Correct, and there's a lot more cities doing lining, but yeah,
Yes.
we've since I've been here, we actually had to do one recently, but we've only done open trench on for 2 blocks since I've been here because it is so much more cost effective.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you for telling us what we already knew.
Or
thought we knew. Yes. All right. Other questions for staff? Certainly, this will be coming back with more information that we've requested, as well as staff continues to evolve the information here. But I'm encouraged because certainly, that significant amount that we've been putting into the street fund, I mean, it does probably go a long ways towards helping some of those other funds where the annual expenditures aren't too high, but we're really running negative pretty soon in the future. So if we can look at some ways to shore that up, I think that would be great. And certainly, as we mentioned at our last meeting with the franchise fee, that the pool of payers is a broader pool than the property tax, and so that has some advantages to it as well. Anything else from the council on the CIP at this time? All right. Thank you again, Ms. Petrick, for all the work you guys do. All right. That then brings us to a discussion of our youth commissioners and attendance policy related to that. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce this item, which was brought forward by Councilmember Bauer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real briefly, as you mentioned last meeting, we did talk about this, about making sure that we understood what the attendance expectations were for youth commissioners. We do currently in code in 20104F have the outlines the attendance policy, which we believe is for all commissioners, but maybe that's where we need to get clarification to make sure we state that absences, whether excused or unexcused, are treated the same, and if they miss 3 consecutive meetings in a row, or 3 consecutive meetings, it goes without saying, and then, or more than 30% of meetings in a rolling 12-month period, the staff liaison, working through me, will share that information with the city council. That does not mean it's an automatic dismissal from the commission, by the council. The council can consider that, or they could just take that under advisement here. And as I looked at the code, the code myself, if there is lack of clarity, we should probably really state that this applies to youth commissioners, and probably under 20104F, where it says it's the expectation that commissioners, maybe something as simple as including youth commissioners attend all meetings of the commission. Now, there's a conversation to be had that do we treat youth commissioners differently on their unique role? They're younger folks. They have maybe different responsibilities, such as school and things. But there's probably a balance, right? You don't want somebody appointed that doesn't show up, but you also want to have an ability, maybe some flexibility. So I'm just saying all that to set it up. I'm not sure which direction you want to go, and Councilmember Bauer certainly may have some thoughts on this too. But if it's clarity, I think it's very simple addition of words. If you want to have a different level of expectation, we should talk through that then.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Since Councilmember Bauer had brought this forward, I'll
I'm
recognize
not
you
sure
first.
if I brought it forward, but I know I brought.
You brought it up.
brought it up, so close enough. Yeah, and the reason I brought it up is because I think there was a situation where there was a few more absences in one of the commissioners, youth commissioners, which we did ultimately reappoint, and I think that was the right thing to do. But it just brought up this kind of open-ended, this question of what to do about these absences. So I'm comfortable with, as the city manager noted, that it's not an automatic, you miss 30% of your meetings in 12 months that you're removed commission, whether you're a youth commissioner or an adult commissioner. And I think that's the right thing. I think in a lot of these cases, there's situations, there's circumstances that come up. So I'm a little bit hesitant to just making a hard and fast rule for this. There's all kinds of things that can happen, and I don't think there's a need for that. And I think we should retain the flexibility. And if there is some confusion with the youth commissioners, maybe making sure that that applies. I brought this up because it was ambiguous with what this meant with the youth commissioners as well. So it may just be that this is, nothing needs to be changed here. But I definitely don't want to put something more restrictive on this for any commissioner or any commissioners.
Sure. And I could actually see non-youth commissioners arguing that they've got a lot of demands on their time too, and they would like the same amount of leniency as well. So yeah, it's a balance for sure. As I read the code, I think one could read the code that any reference to commissioners applies to all commissioners, and that ought not to be ambiguous. But if we need to be more clear, we could certainly be more clear. I would be okay with some clarity in that regard. Certainly, I'm not necessarily interested in adding additional attendance requirements for youth commissioners or more stringent. So it certainly would be okay with being where we're at. I don't know what other council members' thoughts are. Councilmember Schroeder?
Yeah, that's how I read it. It was for all commissioners. And actually, the way I also read it is it's just information for us to have. And actually, if say a youth or anybody is missing a lot, that gives us that opportunity to have a conversation then and say, hey, is there something, we need to help you with or whatever. So it's really, I see it as more, it gives us more information and that it doesn't say that we will absolutely do this or that. So I would be comfortable leaving it the way it is.
And I should clarify one thing too. This is information that's provided by staff to the city council,
Right.
Not in a council meeting or in a
Right.
packet.
Right.
Other than at the
Right.
point of reappointment, there is a
Right.
summary of all the members that are up and their
Yep.
attendance history.
Yep.
But if there is somebody who's having an issue with attendance, that is brought to the council offline.
Yep.
And as you were saying, there are things that can be done probably mostly at a staff level offline to work with members on that. Councilmember Strawn?
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment just because of privacy. You don't know what someone's going through. And I think I'm comfortable with leaving the attendance as is, just because differing from an adult commissioner, a youth commissioner may not drive on their own. They may be dependent on a family or a shared car or school obligations that they can't control. So I think when we had none, I really appreciate having some, and tonight we saw the advantage of having the contributions. And so I want to make sure that we don't make it so impossible for someone, 100% attendance required. They may have a job and other things too. So we tend to get the folks who are involved in a lot of things because that's the kind of kid who wants to do this kind of thing. So I think we need, what I noted though was I didn't see anything in the ordinance itself about the voting, which we had decided that the youth commissioner could be a voting member or not. So I didn't see that written out specifically in this advisory commission. Was that intentional that we omitted that?
There's some.
It is in the policy.
It's in the policy.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
In
and
the
that's also
procedure.
where the background check aspect of
Okay.
adult members on commissions with youth and things like that. That's all in the policy part of it, which wasn't in the code.
I believe, is there a carve out for the planning commission though? Or do we not put a youth commissioner on there? Because that is a quasi judicial.
Statutory.
I know we talked about that. I'm trying to recall. I think in the end, I don't know. I'm not sure we did. Did we have a carve out? Do you remember?
at all?
Should we have a carve-out?
Well, I think because it's at the commissioners and families' option to opt into voting, that's a part of it, and we'd have to look to see what we said about specifically the planning commission, but I think you're right, there's something related to that because it's a statutory
Right.
thing.
Right. There's like, they can count towards quorum
Mhm.
or those things.
Councilmember McGrath.
So I would agree with the comments that have been made. I do want to have some leeway for young people that are learning. It's a different group of people than someone who's a 30, 40, 50-year-old professional who's used to, meetings being important and all that. I would like us to have the chair or maybe the staff liaison reach out to the people before it comes to us as an issue so that we understand if someone's having family issue or, whatever their issue is, that there is some leeway there. And I know we have that written right in here that may, we use the word may, so before we ever did that. And I think that's what we've done in the past, Mayor, is we've gotten more information before we don't kick people off the commission lightly.
Right. Well, and I think, in the case, it was interesting in the case of the particular youth commissioner reappointment. I think it may have been a bit of a surprise to council members that that person had missed 5 or 10 meetings or something like that. And so that the system didn't quite work in terms of getting the information to the council offline. And I'm not, certainly it's not about, saying something terrible happened there or anything, but just to try to-
If I could, two things. One, I was going to address that. There are mechanisms and they're good mechanisms, and we sometimes fall short of that. So we're going to reinvigorate that system to make sure there's that knowledge in there. And so my apologies for that, because that's not something that I want to see. It's very clear in the ordinance, and it's more information sharing, and so we've fallen short on that. So sorry about that. So we'll make measures to make sure we do that better and consistently. The other thing, I just got a nudge from somebody watching out there that we do not appoint youth commissioners to planning commission and police civil service.
Right. That's
Okay.
what the two were.
So that answers the question.
Got it. Thank you to that person.
Yes.
Someone
Right,
who has
and-
his phone number.
Right, and I do want to recognize an opportunity for public comment
Yes.
because
That'd
we
be
have
great.
a member of the public who has been patiently waiting for that opportunity for us to be quiet so they could speak, and so I appreciate that and welcome you this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name is Amanda LaGrange. I call Roseville home on Irene Street specifically. And I really appreciate the comments that you've all made about the importance of our youth commissioners. As a member of the Equity and Inclusion Commission, there are two pieces that I really wanted to celebrate around youth commissioners. And the first is around the insights and benefits that they bring to our commission and the perspectives of so many youth, but also so many folks connected to the school system that our commission would really be missing out on without those commissioners. I also think back to when I was their age, and I think of what an incredibly informed citizen I would have been with such an opportunity. And so I think there's an amazing opportunity for these youth, but also just for our community more broadly, for investing in them. And so, as many of you have commented, chances are the folks that are willing to say yes to these commissions are most likely the folks that have said yes to other obligations and the flexibility that's needed, just as kind of a no-brainer to make sure that we can continue to have really rich perspectives on these commissions. So appreciate that you all seem to be aligned and the bringing of the kind understanding and flexibility that's needed to continue investing in these youth. So thank you.
Right, thank you for your comments, appreciate that perspective.
And thank you for waiting.
Right,
You're welcome.
that's part of being engaged, is sometimes you gotta wait till that thing comes up that you want to talk about. We wish there was a way we could do it all simultaneously, but we're not there. All right, I think we've covered this item. All right, then that brings us to no minutes this evening. Actually, that brings us all the way down to future agenda review. Mr. Trudgeon.
And Mayor and Council, I'll be really brief. You know what's in front of you for our next meeting. We have a very lengthy agenda. Some topics we know we'll have interest from the public here. So we will try to make sure we can expedite things that we can, the best way we can, but certainly we want to make sure there's ample time for you to deliberate and for the public to weigh in. I know we'd sent some initial information to the council previously, so you have some background on that, but the case will contain that full amount of information there. After that, we have 2 meetings in August, 2 official council meetings in August, the 11th and 25th. The 20th, once again, is the date for the commission applicant interviews, which I think we're just trying to fill 1 vacancy on PWET. Then you see the September meeting. So I'll have a little bit more detail at the next meeting about the August 11th meeting. We have some topics that we can certainly add to that. 25th, 2 things to note there. That's the city manager budget, which you all are aware of. And we also anticipate, actually, I should, okay, I do have it on here. Last bullet point, we are bringing forward the request for proposals for the final design for the Maintenance Operations Center and Licensed Passport Dance Studio. The schedule we talked about today at the August 25th meeting, we're looking to authorize the release, or to, I'm sorry. So
Accept, like,
21st, we're going to release
contract?
it into award. Thank you, on the 25th of August to award that contract. Couldn't come up that way. So just to anticipate that, and then if assuming we go with that, then we'll off to the races to get some of that design work to be underway. That's all I have at this point.
All right. Thank you. Questions on the future agenda or initiated items from council members?
Question on a future agenda. It was noted that we might have a meeting in November that's not on a Monday. Is that something that's scheduled? If not, can we get that scheduled so make sure?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's something that we noticed that we're going to have to address. We'll try to tee that up. We can still have the meeting at a regular scheduled November meeting. We just can't hold the truth in taxation. So either we do it on the same night, December 2nd, or we do 2 meetings in December. So we'll frame that up for you all, and you guys can have that conversation.
Didn't we talk about this when we adopted our meeting schedule, or did we just punt it?
We mentioned it.
I thought we talked about
We
it
mentioned it, but
at
did
that
we come
time, at
to
the
an
end of last
decision?
year.
I don't think we
It's
resolved.
unusual for us to punt something like that.
We'll tee it back up
Okay.
and have the conversation. You have some options.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure
Get on
that
the calendar.
calendars are free for that.
All right. Other questions on future agenda items or council liaison reports? I did want to note, for the benefit of the council, just very quickly, that you may be aware of the fairly substantial incident at McCarran's Park, I think on the 4th of July weekend. And there were a number of questions raised, and I had just forwarded some questions to staff for some follow-up, and asked that the council be included in the information that's provided. So just want to make you aware that that would be coming. Councilmember Bauer?
And one other note, myself and Councilmember Shorter had the pleasure of touring the new St. Paul water facility, and they are actually serving water out of a portion of that starting, I believe, Tuesday. Is that correct?
Tomorrow.
Yes.
All right. Tomorrow is Tuesday. You're both right. All right. And that's the St. Paul Water Facility on the other side of Rice Street in Maplewood.
Yep.
They did a major project over the last several years to update their facility and change some of the way they treat the water, and hopefully make it better for all consumers and also more cost-effective to operate. But right. So good.
And better than what they have right now.
So
water should be even more award-winning.
there we go. On that, on a high note, we should note the only other item on our agenda this evening is a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, second by Councilmember Strawn to adjourn. No discussion on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 9:24 p.m., only 4 minutes behind schedule. Thank you,
What?
everyone.
How about that?